and Jean and the nanny state that it was definitely not the two of them. After all, they were in the intermediate class at that time, so there wasn't much to where to go. ATR and Luna says she's right and it probably wasn't Mary Iona and the other brothers T, and that those who are left are Joshua Daipo's Han Vigo and Luna, and she says that leaving the young master Ha and Vigo aside, the others cannot be investigated so easily, and Luna says that this is clear. After all, the three have a very strong base and there is a good chance that they will have a lot of trouble investigating them. She says that for now it will be better. Just keep an eye on it because it will only cause confusion if she tries to go after it with just one reason, and the nanny says it was a beautiful decision of hers and says that there may have been an assassination attempt, but Jean ended up growing up healthy, so she doesn't need to worry so much, and the boy returns to Agile Murakin and she is soon happy to. He comes back, but he says he's very strong. Soon even she won't be able to beat him, but the girl says that that's a very dangerous place, and if something had happened to him, she would have given her life to avenge him, and Murakin calling. She with strawberry pie, he asks her not to say something like that, and so he asks the boy if he did what? Report straight, and he says yes, and he says they are probably thinking that he is completing his missions with external help, but he doesn't care about that, and more importantly he asks them both to look at it and shows the core of a golem alive, and he says that the boy is very lucky because seeing that he came back without a scratch, the golem must have been a failure, and he asks if he found that in the Cologne ruins, and he says yes, and says that 2 warehouse guards turned into monsters and attacked him. And he regenerated no matter where he cut, and this fell when he cut his hearts, and Murakin stays scared by this because first it was a giant from the cemetery and now a living golem, and there he asked what the damned Zipfel are plotting, and he says that if what the boy is saying is true, then it must have been Zipfel's doing. And he remembers that the ruins are in his territory, and he becomes thoughtful and tells the boy to open up a space in his schedule because they are both going back to Cologne, and he says he needs to ask them directly what shit is happening. Then the boy says that he is also hesitant to go back because of the living golems, but he is sure he will be safe with the Murakin by his side, and he even says that if he's lucky he might even use this chance to find the mana source, and no matter how much trouble they cause, the Zipfel will try to cover everything anyway. So the boy says he will find some time, and as soon as the mission is over, Kajin and the Raz brothers return to run Kendall alone. However, Mi and Yn revoked their status as cadet and exiled them from the clan, and Jean says that the exile was a harsh punishment for cadets who technically completed their missions, but there was no one who sympathized with Idso in June 1795. Jean finally ends your training with the stone. Clara Ist says that from tomorrow only the Tana brothers need appear. Ist tells the boy that it seems that the morning training he participates in together with Kadit is also no longer necessary, so next week the patriarch must say something to him, and the T brothers don't just go around asking if maybe their father wants to do it. Of Jean a provisional flag bearer, and they say that a provisional flag bearer means that he will have to leave the Candel to accumulate honor for become a true flag bearer, and they say that the boy will need to act alone without the help of anyone from the clan, and the boy says that this will finally happen because now he will be able to strengthen himself as he wants without worry about others. So with Patriarch C, he says that soon they will arrive in the Garden of Swords, and the Patriarch says that the son he had in his birth continues to interfere with his training, and he says that he wanted to hide in the Black Sea for at least 10 years, but he asks how many times they've been like this and tells him that he can feel that Jean hasn't been a normal child since the Storm Castle, but he didn't think it would be like this after all. The young master's actions in the Garden of Swords were especially shocking, and the Patriarch says that the boy's fighting spirit is not normal, and when he went to Storm Castle is for the first time, even though he was a child, his eyes were already full of resentment. However, it seemed like the boy was trying to hide it, and he says he doesn't think he'll be able to forget how Jean teased his brothers as soon as he arrived at the Garden of Swords without anyone teaching him. He instinctively understood how to end his opponents, and he says that his other children knew this and tried to keep Jinho under control. But look at the boy. Despite his older brothers, old people sent to their death, he continues to come back stronger, reaching the level 5 stars, and he says that more than Mummet or as Nas Cologne, he found his first mission stranger then. Somehow he won against someone from the White Wolf tribe in Manabro, and he says he imagined the boy would kill a white wolf using his subordinates as a shield, but he ended up killing one on his own, and he managed to prove The essence behind his principles with that S in it. C asks if the patriarch truly believes that Jean killed the white wolf alone, so his father says yes, but anyway he says that maybe the boy wasn't completely alone. Anyway, he's a fun boy, he should ask about the events that happen. Go to him when he hears, and so he arrives at the house with everyone greeting him, and his wife says that everyone was waiting. And he says that she must have had a lot of things to do, but she says that not so much. After all, her eldest son made all the preparations, so she didn't have any to do. Nothing. But the patriarch says that contrary to what she said, if her grown children were acting appropriately, he would not have had to leave the Black Sea, and he says that the guests who will visit the clan today, they are trying to please him but not his children, and Rosa says he is right about that and asks him to come in. Because she made his favorite foods personally, he looks forward to it, so he looks at Jin's waist, noticing the swords that are there, and asks Hanan and Vigo if they gave Jean the swords he allowed. But they open the game saying that Jean took them from him because they should give him the swords if he managed to complete the mission in the ruins. Stick together, and his father starts laughing, encouraging the boys to try to get the swords next time. But it's a smart guy's joke, and he says that sometimes it makes him question whether he's really his son. So already at night he talks to the boy asking if this wouldn't be his first banquet, and he starts to think that just like in his previous life he got it. Experienced the banquet of other clans thanks to his master, but his first banquet in his own clan, and he speaks that before he had to hide during the banquets as if he were a criminal, but this time he is on his father's side, the star of the show. So he says he only had to die once, and his father comments to G as he knows the clan doesn't have many banquets with. This is often because they only do it when there is something that is really worth celebrating, and he says that this is what the boy's achievement is incredible, and the boy thanks his father. So the patriarch asks how many guests he thinks there will be there, and he says that at least 1,000, and his father says that's practically what he was told, and there are 200 more people than the last one banquet 7 years ago. And he asks if the boy knows what ISO means. He says it means the influence of his clan has grown in the last 7 years, and he says that the banquet of 1,000 people happens frequently in other clans. But every person present there is exceptional, and he says that the only thing he has done in the last few years is kill monsters and train in the Black Sea, but he says that the reason his clan's influence has continued to grow is because he is the only knight Genesis in the current era. In other words, if he disappeared, everyone gathered there would turn their backs on the Run Candel clan. Jim thinks that his father is right, because without him the clan wouldn't be able to accumulate so much influence, and he says that together with Zipful they are called the two great clans. But as soon as their father disappears, the gap between the Zipful and Randall will increase drastically, and then the Zipful will rule everything. And then he tells his father that if he hadn't been there and everyone had turned their backs on Hunk Del, and the clan had reached the point where it could no longer fight against the oppression of Zipful, he would leave the clan. The kid has courage, we have to admit this. And his father asks what he just said. Then he says that if the clan were to fall due to his absence, then the cause of the fall would be incompetence of the next patriarch, and he has no intention of dying like a dog under the command of such a leader. Furthermore, he asks how many weaknesses the clan has, and his father asks what weaknesses this clan has. He says that in exchange for returning Vigo's sword, he made the boy show all the contracts commissioned for the clans that only the flag bearers can see, and the head of the Burn clan deceived the emperor and stole the empire's treasury, and still so he can participate in that banquet because of the Hun Candel. And the greatest artist of the Clever clan asked them to kill a wizard of Zipful, and the daughter of the clan Harold sold her clan treasure secretly because of a gambling addiction. So he asked June Candel to get him back, and one detail is that she still hasn't achieved pay for the order, and he says that just by looking around he managed to find several weapons that aren't swords, and he says he's sure he has several other weapons in secret contracts that only his patriarch and mother can see. So his father asks if he is saying that if he wasn't there he could protect the clan using these weapons, and the boy says that if a patriarch who is not a Genesis Knight is going to lead a Candel, things will depend on his negotiation skills. And the patriarch says that the boy, you're right, but they're not the only ones who have other people's weaknesses. The Zipful clan must have an idea of their weaknesses just like them. The boy says he doesn't doubt that, however, they have no justification for using these weaknesses. And the patriarch asks what the boy means by that. He says it's because the role of villain belongs to them, the Rons. Candle and the boy says that anyway, even with so many weapons, if the next patriarch doesn't use it correctly, he will not hesitate to turn his back and leave the clan, and says that he himself will prepare his revenge against Zippel, no matter how long it takes. And his father notices the boy talking about revenge and says that he needs to be alive to get revenge, so this plan isn't too bad. He says that the other children don't have the boldness of Hippoti about the fall of Run Candle in front of him, that they would talk a lot of shit or regret, but Jean calmly revealed his intentions quickly and directly. So he says it's a shame he was born after his birth. As if Luna's talent, Mari's savagery, and Deepu's fighting spirit were all fused into one. He talks about who is between 10 and 15 years old, and this is the time he will be able to protect the clan as patriarch, and he says it will be fun to see if Jean can overcome the succession dynamics before his time is up. And his father calls the boy to enter. After all, most of the guests seem to have arrived, and he says one more thing. He says he has to tell them something secretly after the banquet, and tells the boy to wait for him to call him. And Jean thinks it must be about him becoming a temporary flag bearer, and he thinks he will leave this place sometime after the banquet is over. He says that the 4-day banquet will be very long, but while he is thinking, someone comes shouting, "The Lord Patriarch." He asks what happened. Then the man says that they have crashed the banquet, and the patriarch is surprised by this, and Jinho starts thinking about wedding crashers and suspects that they could be Zipfel, and the man says that there are 5 of them in total, and he says that Andre Zipfel is the second in command and 4 other family members, so the patriarch is very Pado, and tell Rin to tell Andre to disappear and just let the rest of his family in, and tell him not to do that. He himself is to put his servants to do it, and Jean thinks it's true that Andre's visit is Rod, but to dishonor the second in command of Zipfel, so much so, sending him away. And the patriarch asks if Jin thinks his treatment is very harsh, and he says it is not refreshing, and the patriarch says that the moment Andre leaves, his emotions take over and go out with his family. He will ignore the permission given by the patriarch of Run Candle, who said that his family can enter. This is something that is not allowed in the Garden of Swords, and as he thought, Andre will follow his order, otherwise he will have to return home with 1 leg less. And he says that now it's time for the banquet begins, and he thanks everyone for their presence, speaking Serkam, the patriarch of Run Candle, and he says that it is able to have fun thanks to having such a capable son in his later years. And he says he would first like to thank your youngest son, Jin Hun Candle. He says that as he knows there are only 2 rules that they must follow. 1. Run Candle banquet. If a fight starts in the middle of the banquet, those involved will be schooled by the Guardian Knights to the arena, and the loser must surrender, while winner shows mercy. After all, this is still a celebration, so Jean thinks that this is a party of predestined meetings, and he says that this is a meeting of thousands of people who have control over the continent, and he says that these people are interconnected in a complicated way, and he says that if they were there just a normal party, they would just be passive-aggressive towards each other before coming back home. But this is a banquet held in the Garden of Swords. As long as you follow the 2 rules made by your father, cannot go as far as killing the enemy, but can still beat him and can even obtain supremacy. Official. While Soren tells them to enjoy a banquet, Jean thinks that this clan is very crazy, and he tells Jean also takes advantage, because if there is someone he wants to fight, he should take them, and his father says he can't challenge someone who seems to be more weaker than him unless he released him or his clan, and Jean says that knows this, and he also knows that he can't lose no matter what, and so his father says that this is obvious, and if this happens he will take back everything that belongs to him, not only the Bradamanti but also his nanny, and the boy insists to say that he will remember this. He says that now that he stops to think, this is the first time that he talks to his father, so he says that in his life this is something he couldn't even dream of, and he says they just had a real conversation, well, convincing father-son relationship right now. But he says having a father-son bond or being a kind son, it's not part of his plans in this life, and in this life he just wants to surpass his father, and that's the most important thing. Then in the middle of the banquet, his brothers start to come close to him, congratulating the boy for reaching the level of 5 stars Ks. He asked if it's okay for them to stay a little close to the boy, and he says of course, and asks Daytona how the training with the Clara swords is going. And he says it's getting better because they're improving a lot after they switched to the weapon his uncle recommended, and Jean says it's good to know of this, and Jean talks down to them saying that they can leave as soon as they are satisfied with this little theatrics. And in the middle, From their conversation someone arrives to talk to Jean. He recognizes him as the first flag bearer of the K-clan and his brothers take the opportunity to leave the boy, so he starts talking to that man saying that he heard a lot about his tales of heroism as a child, but while he is talking to that man someone comes up and hits Jean on the back and he says he was feeling, asking what kind of kid would have reached the 5-star level at 15, but he's really a kid and says he must be at least 10 years younger than him and sends a shout out to the boy saying his name is Huger, and the boy doesn't like it at all, saying that it's a pleasure to meet him too, but the man says that he's not a very impressive boy and he seemed to be one just because he was a bit rude, and he says that the boy might even be a run candle but still. So he's your veteran in the world of martial arts, and he says he's just proud of your heat, he doesn't need to stay like this. The boy tells Huger from the Tuk clan to pay close attention. His actions just now were a insult to everyone who has shown him respect so far in this whole bunch. He's really pissed at that guy, so he says that if he wants to stay with heat and veteran ISO, he should be even more attentive, and he says that the first and the second flag bearer of the Ken clan, the Knights of the Dragon King, the Black King's mercenaries, most of them, they are veterans of that guy, and he says that he should treat him like they treated him, so he tells Huger to accept his mistake and apologize to him, and Jean says that since he taught him, he will let this one go, so the other guy arrives saying that Huger just had his life saved by Jean. He advises Huger to follow the boy's advice, and another still says that he knew that his big mouth would end up causing trouble one day or another and tells him, let this pass, he doesn't need to be so tense, so if they say so he apologizes to his seniors and asking them to please forgive their mistake, and also apologizes to Jean, and then Luna arrives, saying that he has a great talent for making enemies and says that it would be nice if he could act like a normal child sometimes, and she says that it is representative of the Hun Kandel clan today, and she asks Jinho what he would have done if Huger had challenged him for a duel, because he seemed to at least be in the 6 stars, and he says that if he had done that he is sure that the patriarch and the elders from the Tuko clan would have intervened because they had been watching him for a long time, and Luna was surprised that he had even taken this into consideration while assessing the situation. If she asks if any noble taught him the technique, secret way to take care of people or something like that, and he says that if there is someone who teaches that kind of thing, wouldn't it be it's a bad idea to keep this person close to him, and he asks if, besides learning to use a sword, anything else matters, and he says that it may be difficult for her to understand, but as the hated youngest in the family he needs to do it a lot to survive, and she wonders if it really is because he is talented and brilliant, and she thinks he is. That's why he was almost murdered in the Storm Castle, and she wonders who was that brother who noticed Jin's talent so early, and she says that anyway, she's only there because it's the banquet to congratulate him, but that's not really like her, and she thinks that it's time for her to do something more fun, so he asks if she's going, and she says yes, saying that he is not self enough to be yours dance partner, and says that when he grows up they will dance together and she will take him to a great place, so he says he's anxious, and she says that before leaving she has to leave a message for the people just like he did. So she just pats his head and leaves the boy wondering, and she says that if she does that they should understand how much she values him, and people will avoid being rude to the boy because of their fear of her. Then he says he'll see the boy later, and people start gossiping, asking if that's the white whale they know and talk about, until she must like her younger brother a lot. Meanwhile, Nito's protagonist, laughing, begins to shake. He begins to speak with force, is the one who is dying of envy because he would also like to rest her head on Miss Canvas's shoulder, and he says that you have to write a poem for her today, and you are going to sing that poem all night long, and I think I did. Disgusted, asking if he can't shut up and tell him not to be so hard on the boy because subject could be important for Bouvard, and she says that since Bouvard is dragging her around he can comfortably enjoy this feast of predestined encounters. Then she says they should be more respectful with him, and his brother doesn't like that at all, but Bvar says that as expected, but she understands, and he says that too. He will always be at their feet with pleasure. Meanwhile, Jean realizes that it is very difficult to act as a master. He becomes asking where those damn zipfels are, and he says it's a bit annoying, but he'll need to look for them in person, and so someone has a glass on the table asking if this young lady could order a drink with the star rising member of the Hun Kandel clan. Then he realizes that she is Circe Dorma from the Hidden Palace, and she says that she is a Honor to meet the young master Jean Run Candel, and Jean gets Miguel saying that it's his honor to meet the girl, and she says that he is 15 years old, the same age as her, and she asks how he managed to achieve that too, dear Marcial Nessa. Age, and she says that it makes her jealous of June Candel's blessed physique, and the boy says that he also thinks that is a blessing. However, the hidden palace is also a blessed lineage. He can't even begin to imagine how much the average of the hidden palace values her, and the girl says that the master only values her because compared to a certain someone who he's not an only child, he's the master's only daughter. So she quickly takes off, hoping that wasn't rude. He says he wasn't because it is well known that he is the youngest brother among several brothers, and in fact he says he is jealous of her having several brothers. It could be something problematic, and Jean thinks it's strange, but he's sure she recognized him, and he's in awe. I'm not sure why she's not talking about Mummet, and he says there's no way she won't recognize him, just because he had some ashes on his face. Then the girl says she has something to ask him. He tells her to go ahead, so she asks how she is. His injured leg, he realizes that she recognized him, and he says he's fine thanks to a certain person who passed by medicine on her personally, and he says he doesn't even know how to return the favor, and the girl says he's more helpless. Ashamed of what she thought, and asks what he was doing in the moonlit well in Mummet, and she says she thinks he deserves an explanation, so the boy asks why, and she says that her subordinates couldn't find the terrorist wizard in the end, and that hurt her pride a lot and made her question whether the young man was to blame. Boy, she let go. Then he says he can't be a wizard after all, he's a Run Candel, and asks if he really is suspicious. He says he's sure she knows her clan. Then she says she doesn't think he's suspicious. However, the things change if they had a mission from Hun Candel, who hired a wizard because he couldn't complete it, and among the people who were at the inn, the only ones who could have been targets for the Hun Candel clan were the members of the palace. Hidden, he says that as the captain of the 7 swords of the hidden palace, she cannot let this go, and he thinks that she is confusing things, thinking that he was after the members of the hidden palace, but he says that she is not completely wrong since he injured them while trying to kill the Might I Am. Tell the girl, who doesn't understand how this would be evidence against him because everything she said is a simple hypothesis, and the girl realizes that he will deny it until the end and says that if he is. So she has a plan. She says she's going to drag him to the arena and finish him off and spit on his disgusting face. Boy, then she challenges Jean Ron Candel to a duel, but the boy says that his father warned him not to fight against someone who appears to be bad, weaker than him, but he says that if she wants it that much he has no choice but to be accepted. Then the Guardian Knights ask if the young master came to duel, and he says yes and tells him to leave, leaving only the doctors, and he also asks for 2 decent swords, so they say they will lock up the arena until they finish, and Jim thinks that spectator battle maniacs will start showing up after midnight, and she is the daughter of the palace mistress, and it would be very cruel to end her in front of everyone, so she tells Jean, telling him to make a promise before they start, and the boy asks what it was, and she says that if he wins he will have to tell her everything. It happened in Mammoth that day, no lies, so the boy accepts. He says that on the other hand, if he wins they're going to pretend that they never met that day, so the girl realizes that he's hiding something. So she tells him to go inside. He doesn't wait a bit, attacking the girl with everything. Then he realizes that there is ice on his face and stops her attack, which almost hits him, and he talks about the skill only of the lineage and Dorma, the myriads of Ice Blade, and NC Jean says he didn't think she would use her technique secrets right away and starts teasing the girl, saying that as he is younger he still has to learn the techniques secrets of his clan, and asks her what she should do, and she simply says that it's not her problem, leaving at the boy with a lot of paper, and she thinks about him, saying that he really is a 5-star, and she says it looks like he's barely blocking their attacks, but as they exchange golfs his true abilities are coming to the surface, but it's no use. Difference of 1 star can be easily filled by using the 3rd form of the Iceblade mirror, and it says that since she is weaker and has less energy she cannot prolong this, and when he counterattacks after reading her attack pattern she will change and finish him, and Jean thinks that Cirrus is still a 4-star knight. And even if she can use the Ice Blade she will fall behind in attack and defense, and after realizing the difference between them he is sure that she is preparing something to change the pace of the fight, and he bets that she will use her secret technique, but he has no way of estimating how powerful the Ice Blades are. So the two clash their ultimate attack, he says that in this case he will have to respond using his own secret technique, and he says that among the dozens of techniques he read about in Storm Castle, the strongest among the various secret techniques he got it. However, as he prepares to attack Crabs, he starts to laugh and says that it's over for Jin going up him with everything with his ice blades from the third form. Valen then goes after the boy, and he realizes, which has an aura condensed in the fragments of ice, and beings in turn appears within a whirlpool with blade of ice around him, looking at him in the most be one way she could manage. She looks at me like that way I ask for forgiveness even for what I didn't do. Then the boy realizes that things are getting serious, and he laughs, and this destabilizes CS because she has already performed her Levante, and even a genius who reached these sea stars at 15 years should not be able to break through the secret technique of the hidden palace. But even so, she is very restless, if asking why, and when she notices Jin's sword is already in the girl's face and she barely has time to dodge it, and when the sword was next to the girl's face, Jin realizes that she is going to explode and screams for beings, and after that big explosion, Jin thinks he should have used another technique other than the Attila clan's Bladestorm, because he says that that attack was too destructive for someone at the 4-star stage to handle, so he says that if she couldn't dodge it she must be dead or crippled. But when he finds CS, she has her head down, thinking that soon she of all people, because they were afraid of dying, turned away so as not to get hurt, and she starts to wonder if she really did it then. He asks if she's okay because he almost killed her. He says it was bad, and he thinks that even after warning her, tried not to dodge the storm of blades, he says that no matter how important honor and pride are, sis is still just a 15-year-old child, and she is too young to suppress her desire for survival. So he says that if he had been in her place, he would have also swerved, and I bet she would have also warned him to swerve so he wouldn't have. Will say nothing more, and he thinks that this won't be enough to console her, but the girl takes out the ointment from inside from her hobby and says that he has a wound on his face, and she applies ointment, saying that she will consider it as payment for saving her life, and Jim asks if she doesn't value it too much. I remember the life of the only successor to the hidden palace, but the girl says it's because it's a life to be pitied, but she says she's going to start valuing it more than new, and tells him not to worry about it, and she says that from now on they are two people who just got together. Meet, and says he'll see the boy tomorrow, and the only thing Jim can do is look backwards, and the other one day he says there are fewer people than yesterday, and he thinks that maybe today is the real beginning of the Festival of Encounters. Predestined, since now he will be able to watch the duels. He says that since there are fewer people in the hall, he will finally can see those damn Zipfel. He says he heard that all the guests from the Zipfel clan were from 15 to 20 years old, and he says that this is perfect since they have similar ages, and it will be good to be able to compare their magic level. And he also says that there are things he would like to ask about Cologne, but it seems like a bad idea. He says it's okay because he'll have a lot of free time once he becomes a provisional flag bearer, and he thinks he can just investigate the Column Murican ruins later, and he says that with his help it will be easier to find the source of mana, and the boy says that those damn Zipfel won't have the chance to produce Magua and mass this time, and while he thinks he can stop something terrible from happening, he Murican him right there, and the dragon is having fun. All with beings. She asks where is his master. Meanwhile, Jean is really squeezing his fist, and they notice that cat's name is Nabi Nabi Run Candle, and she asks Jean if he was the one who named it, and the boy says that yes, possessed with rage. Then someone else recognizes that cat and says they knew they would find Jean if they followed that one. Cat then he says that they finally met again, and says that the boy has no idea how long he spent looking for him. Then Jean asks who could that be. He says that this is a disappointing thing to say because how could he have forgotten him? He has been thinking about the boy every day, and if he keeps wondering what is wrong happening, and he says he's going to give him a hint, telling him to try to guess, and says his name starts with B. While he starts going crazy if they say it's a weird sound taking the nab out, and the boy asks if that tip helped, but Jim says no, so the boy says he will give a second tip and says they met through first time at the Mel Kingdom transfer portal, and Jim says he doesn't remember that, so the boy says J. Then the memory is surprisingly bad and tells him to listen carefully, saying his name, but Jay doesn't let him determine the phrase, calling the boy a Berdinho Zepp, that he says he was being very obvious when he pretended he didn't know him. Asks him why he couldn't understand and why he keeps bothering him, and the boy only realizes that now while making a dumb face, and Jean is completely surprised that this Goofy is actually going to become A 9-star mage 30 years old, he wonders how he will be appointed as future patriarch of the Zipfel clan, and the boy says that anyway he was looking for him a lot since yesterday and he looked for him for 2 hours today but he couldn't find him. But Jean asks how after all the banquet hall isn't that big and how he couldn't find it for 2 hours, and the boy says he would have found it if he could use magic, but this is banned since this is June Candel's territory, and Jean thinks that either he is lying or he has problems with guidance. But the boy says that anyway it's good to see him because it's been 5 years and he's surprised by. Boy reaches the 5-star stage of magic and he says he knew he would achieve great things, but Baradinho says he wasn't joking either. After all, his magic is already at the 6-star stage and Jean is surprised by this. The boy says that they are a whole stage above his Dig Grima, but Jean is wondering, how is this possible because Baradinho Zipfel, the most talented, is only at the 6-star stage at 18 years old, and Jim says, if it were him, he thinks he would have reached at least the 7-star stage, and he wonders if I would be speaking at the lowest stage on purpose. And Baradinho starts to sing Advantage, saying that playing for the face. It was worth looking for him because he was waiting for the day they would fight, and he told G to go after him, and the boy realizes that he's not lying about his abilities. After all, he's bragging a lot. He says that whatever the case, Baradinho is only in the 6 stars aged 18. After that, heir ZBF, the current patriarch Jean, will be the next person to reach the pinnacle of magic. He is sure of this, and this was a good chance to objectively look at his dormant talent, and Jean tells Little Edge that I told him before, but he needed. You need to learn to shut your mouth and save your words, and the boy says he's saying the same thing as his father. Jean is sure everyone said the same and says anyway he asks about the Zipfel came to the banquet without an official invitation, and he says it was because of him. After all, he begged his uncle to let him could find him. Regan thinks this is strange. After all, their second in command entered enemy territory by cause of a child's tantrum, so the boy says that he heard about the banquet when he was passing by Hofer, so he thought it was destiny, and Jean asks if it was just that, and he confirms that it was, and Jean says that he should be grateful that this is a Kate and he should behave while he's there. But berate, he asks if he's not being too indifferent towards him, and he says he knows Jin's father. It was quite pious with his uncle, and he says that since they are on this subject he will make him a promise, and he says that even if the boy goes to a Zipfel banquet without being invited he won't hurt him, and Jean asks if this is serious, even if he attacked them. So be Jean says, who always keeps his word, and he says that even if Jean does that he won't kill him, and even if something happens he won't participate in the fight. And the boy says that this is nonsense as he walks away and kisses him and asks where he is. He goes and says there's a weirdo he's been staring at nonstop for a while now, and then he talks to the guy who leaves directly from his grandson and asks if there is anything he would like to tell him. So Buvard talks to the boy and asks when Luna is going to come back, and Jean is in disbelief about it, so he asks again when Luna is going to come back because he wanted to give that to her, and he shows a notebook with his photo along with hers and several little hearts. He says it's a collection of poems he wrote during the night, and it's filled with his love. He says he's sure Luna will understand when they both read it, and he says that she will notice that he is a better man than he appears to be. He also says that maybe in the near future he can call Jim his brother-in-law. Baradinho Ko P. Wine. Jean gets very pissed and starts to get irritated, telling the guest what he thinks he needs get beaten up a little, and Jean says that he not only used to mention his sister's name but also dared to call him brother-in-law, and he says that he really must underestimate Candel and orders them to bring that man to Arena E. Then the knights start to pull him, and Buvard calls the boy his brother-in-law again, asking why he is doing this, and he says that everything he did, it was expressing your love, and everyone should have the right to express their love. People get this guy away of your sister. You don't know how much of a dojin this guy appeared in, so he's the protagonist of a very wrong manga. And Buvard shouts again, asking how Jean can do this to him, who is a guest. He asks how can he treat a guest like that, and he says that all he did was call his sister beautiful. So Jean says that the duel will be an unarmed combat. After all, he really wants to need that meat, and after Jean takes Buvard to the arena he even tries to talk, but Jean tells him to shut up, punching him in the face, and he says he doesn't want to. No, and Buv tries to counterattack, and Jean realizes that that's an aura and that he's almost around the 6 stars, and if they realize that Jean chose someone much stronger than him, and she says that it looks like that guy's specialty is soft arts and Baradinho. He compacted, saying that it will be a complete humiliation if he fails, so Buvard manages to hit the boy, asking how dare he touch him with skill level so low while he was going to continue. Latino Gene putting his hand in his face and taking him back and raining punches on his face, and Br Gene starts saying it's over after all. Gene made a quick counterattack afterwards to make him let his guard down and says that it was as expected of him. Then Marg she starts saying that she can't understand young Master Jin's actions. After all, the outcome has already been decided, and she asks why step on someone who has already lost his will to fight, and she wonders why he is acting like that, and she says that Jin exaggerated against someone weaker than him, and she asks if as Bolvid's friends they should stand by and watch this continue. However, seeing what I say, that guy is not weaker than Jin, but she continues saying that she is disappointed in her brother and tells him to go there and teach Jin a lesson, and she tells him to do it through a method more raw than the one Jin used. Then the guy asks if she's telling him to fight Jin. Then everyone starts making fun of her, saying that the girl is brave, and they tell him to accept his sister's request, and he ends up following her order by calling Jin, asking how about him leave this guy and fight him, and Jin starts to analyze Visho. After all, he is going to fight against someone with 7 stars. He says that it doesn't matter, the result is something good for him. He says that just being able to experience the fencing of the Ivali years will be a great lesson for him. He says that Clin Viliano's previous boss was a powerful guy who even her father recognized it. However, he talks about Margul and says that she is a funny lady. After all, she is watching the fight and putting his brother in a very difficult situation, and Jin says that it seems like he cares a lot about his sister, and seeing what I say that he is saying obviously. Then Jim says that as someone who also has a sister, he completely understands his feelings, and he says that he also cares a lot about his sister, and that's why he hopes they can control their mouths, his subordinates, in the future. So I guess I say that it seems like he got something wrong. The guy he just beat up is not his servant, but rather a assistant, and Elle asks if Gaston's Buvard harmed him in any way, and Jean is scared by that name in it. Vich, who continues saying that Buvat is only there to help his sister who has difficulty getting around. He says that he is a craftsman who does not fit into the banquet. While Mistletoe continues talking, he begins to think about the Burva craftsman of Gaston, and he only realizes now that he was the transformer, and he asks what relationship he has since Buvard, and I have says that there was no record of connections between Buvard and the Ivano clan when he was captured in his lifetime previous, and he keeps asking himself if this Visho. I know that Buvard is the transformer, and he says he has more and more questions after he found it. He says he can't be distracted. After all, his opponent is a 7-star knight, and in that vein he says that he will be under his care, and Jean thinks he will focus on the battle, and with that VK I go after him. J can feel from the first blow that this strength is not that of a 7-star knight, and he says that this is a swordsmanship that has a depth equivalent to that of his uncle Z. He says that these sword movements are something that he can't understand at his current level, and everyone realizes that Jean is being pressured from the beginning, but they say that it's already impressive. He's holding up so much. They say that the Grimas of the Evely years are famous for being complex and lively, and also saying that the people who experienced this swordplay never wanted to fight against the four again. Liano again, and Began thinks that no one seems to know, but those from Clan Hun Gondel shine even brighter in situations like this, and he says that if Ziv Liano is a snake, Stoda Run Candel sword is like a rhinoceros advancing. He says that although his horn can break, the headbutt cannot be stopped, so Jean begins to suffer more and more suffocation, and he says that it's clear that Vich is going easy on him, but he also says that it's true that despite him having the skill of someone with 5 stars, he is fighting well against someone who is above 7 stars. He says that although he is reaching his limit, he can start to feel again, so he remembers when he fought that guy he ripped his arm off. Says that this is the same action from back then, and he feels like his sword is on fire, and Evie Liano says it was a good fight, and he goes after the boy, but Jean remains standing still until the last second, and when his sword begins to crack, it is broken, and the blow continues towards Jin's neck, but before it hits him, falls to the side, but he manages to cut Vizik's neck, and he keeps asking himself what the fuck was that in the end. After all, in the moment when Jin's sword broke, he felt something sharp on his neck. He speaks like a stick. He reached the Mind Blade realm while fighting him. He says that if Jin had reacted a second earlier and he had reacted a 1/10 of a second later, his head would have been cut off. While they are taking the boy, he starts to think that Jin is a very scary guy. So a few days later, Murikin is sleeping on the madman's face and he has the cat away and he is surprised to be in his room and thinks he passed out after the fight with Vassal, so Jill goes. Running up to him, he asks how long he slept and she says he slept for 2 days, and the boy realizes that the banquet is over and he didn't even make it. Greeting the guests who came to see him, and she thinks that he doesn't need to think like that because in the last 2 days, the fight between him and Visho was the topic of the moment, and she says that this in itself is enough recognition, and she says that everything was because of him showing the Mind Blade realm at the end, and he says that the fact that he could doing this at the end of a fight against the 8-star knight is incredible, so he thinks it's not a realm of Lumen de M perfect, but he still got what he wanted. He says that the days when he trained with Luna, finally they are paying off. He says that at first he couldn't understand the training and he is impressed that she helped him, so even though he is at a level where this S activates in extreme situations, he doesn't need to be impatient, and it's incredible that he managed to fight an 8-star knight, albeit narrowly and beyond. Of this he says that he gained several things with this banquet. He confirmed the status of Bedin, he obtained something with a friendship with the heiress of the Hidden Palace, and discovered that Buvard Gaston and Visho Villian are acquaintances, so he says he has. There are several possibilities behind the crime of transformation, and it's not something he needs to solve now, so he says he should get more information. First, he sees the flowers that Gil is taking care of and asks who it belongs to, and she says that the heiress of the Hidden Palace left them, and asks if the girl likes him, but he says no because it's a tale from the Hidden Palace. The meaning behind the flower is an endless fight. She says it looks like she wants to fight him again, and Murikin says it doesn't matter and asks if it's his first time getting flowers from a girl. He says that although it's a challenge, it's still monumental, and he asks if the cake Strawberry doesn't agree with him. But she leaves the cat in a vacuum, saying that the patriarch ordered him to go as soon as wake up, and she says she thinks it's time for him to prove himself, and he's excited about it, but it looks like he's going to be away from his family for a good while. Then he asks where his father is and is going to meet him, and when he arrives his father soon realizes, and the boy is apprehensive, and his father says that it has been a while since one of his children has seen him in casual clothes, and the patriarch. He notices that it looks like Jan has noticed that he's going to have to live far away. He says yes because he's planning to leave soon. Then his dad gets scared by this, and Jean realizes that he liked it, and he says he's not sure why, but after he returned it was very easy to read his father in this patriarch ask him if he knows where they are. Then he says that the mausoleum is a place where people who have made great family achievements are allowed to enter through the Garden of Swords, and where his heroes who achieved greatness and are buried, and the patriarch thinks it's great that he knows that, and he says that in other words, the family heroes, and he says that that place is for those who protected it for thousands of years. And he asks if he knows about the first patriarch Timar Unkandel, and he says that he is not buried there. He also says that he knows there are no tombstones for him anywhere in the Garden of Swords. He says that the black power that Jean has the reason why they can't honor him, and his father says that right when he died they made a pact. Humiliating edible, they could never use magic again and honor if ancestors who used it said that the resulting consequences were that the gods of Zipfel united and placed a curse on Run Candel's blood. He says that because of this, everyone born after the first patriarch has a body that cannot use magic. And the patriarch says that when he defeated the Tana brothers with his aura, he didn't ask how he got that power. He asks if the boy remembers this. He says yes, he even lied saying he would use it for the good of the family. But his father says it's a relief that he was young before, because if it happened now he wouldn't let it go, and Sinho asks has he heard the Saldus voice before, and the boy says yes because he calls him a contractor. He says that despite this he did not hear his voice in this life, and the patriarch says that it must be unfair for his brothers, but the patriarch asks if he can use that power to overcome them and dominate the family, and Jim says he's going to go out and see what world, and he says that if there is nothing more worthy of dominating than June Candel, he will do it. Then his father and looks at him smiling and says that to be recognized the others left the Garden of the Sword, but he will be going and find an aspect of the family to recognize, and he says he doesn't know if he should be proud of it or say the boy is arrogant. He says he will give him 5 years, and in that time he must be recognized or recognize the family and come back with his answer. Iso swears with his sword, thanking them for everything they did, and says he will meet him in 5 years, so the boy leaves, and Gil asks if he finished the conversation well with his father, and he says yes, Everything he needs to do now is now, and then he notices that Gil is a little different. He sees something on her wrist and she says it's a device to block her aura so she can't use it, and she says she knows that because she's heard from the older nannies, and she says it's a little strange. Suddenly not being able to use his power, she says that being a nanny instead of building are your own reputation. It is based on what his master becomes. Then he shouldn't make a face like that because this is for him. He says that not only because these next 5 years, but he will continue protecting Gil forever, so he apologizes. She tells him he doesn't say that because once she can be his backup driver, she will be able to regain her power. After Jean finishes his test and he looks back thinking it will be 5 years, he says it feels like this is the beginning. And they leave from there to see the world, and the patriarch, still at home, thinks that despite him having achieved the demigod kingdom with just a sword, he was unable to break the oath that his ancestors made with Zibble. However, Jim made a contract with Sol Dire and has his spiritual energy, and Jim may be the only hope, and he asks if that boy will be able to obtain the power to free the clan. He says he has hope for that. Jay talks to Jean asking if he's really going to leave without saying goodbye, and she says that not only the cadets but Luna, she will also be a little upset, and he tells her not to worry because she has a free spirit, and as for the cadets, she is kinda shameful, and he says it's not like they're going to die. If he said he was leaving, they would probably have a sword ceremony at the gate or something, and Jay realizes that it really is something they would do, so she asks where they are going. She says she heard that the others part Banderas went to Mummet as her first destination, and she says it's because it's better there to capture villains and build reputation, but he thinks about reputation and says that the provisional flag bearers of the clan, before becoming a flag bearer, need to go out into the world and build a reputation in relation to their martial prowess to be recognized as flag bearers, and in the process they can expect no help from the clan. He says that, for example, Mary, she massacred strong people in the south, and he says that only of gaining the pseudonym Mary the Stormwind for being crazy, she became the flag bearer, and he says that all the others took between 6 months and years before returning, and he says that his father still gave him 5 years, and there's only one reason for that. He wants him to reach the peak of his spiritual energy before he comes back. Calls Gilly to go to the Aquam Kingdom, and she says that here would be part of Luther's magical federation, and she says that is Zipful territory. She asks why of all places. He says that when he went there on a mission of the Cologne ruins, he heard that several mages are recorded were wreaking havoc there, and they seem to be tormenting people by forming alliances with mercenaries, and G says that this is a great idea. She loved catching bad guys in her prime and says she's getting excited just imagining it, but Jim says it's actually he has never heard anyone say that this is information he obtained in his past life, and all magicians don't registered, and mercenaries in that place are subordinates of a black clan called Tezen clan. He says that his real objective, it's the underground auction they hold, and he says it must be full of items of unknown real value, and says that among them there are some Tomasos Magicos and the ring that he needs to buy, so Gil tells him that they can use the transfer gate for Reina Kim. After all, according to the clan rules, they could only leave with 10 gold coins, and she says that since he cannot reveal that he is a run Candel to receive external support, and she says that things are going to get difficult, but he says that they will solve this by going to the Zon Kingdom, and she asks how he plans to go there, and Jean says they can fly in it. He asks what Murikin is doing, telling him to go transform. Then he asks if he can really, but he tries to stop it by asking what will happen if someone recognizes him, and he says okay. It's okay, besides, he needs to free himself from time to time, but she's still afraid of the clan. So the Murikin transforms, revealing his true and gigantic form, and tells everyone to hold on tight. They will have to fly for a whole day to arrive in the kingdom Zon. My Saluna, whoever was walking calmly, feels that presence and looks out, seeing the flying dragon. She realizes that it is Jinho. He says that he is flying on a dragon right after they become one provisional flag holder. She is incredulous at this, but says he is a bold boy and wishes him luck for his heartless little brother who left without even saying goodbye to his sister, and already at Rin. Zon Murikin asks if the pie strawberry is fine. After all, she is a little sick. He starts to thicken with a boy. After all, the strawberry pie, it was scared because of him, but he asks why it's your fault. After all, it's his fault for flying weird, but Murikin says it was the boy who wanted to fly, so he comes back to her, and Jean starts making fun of him, saying he's a great black dragon having weird movements like that, so he lays her down saying it won't work and he will stay to take care of her by telling the boy to go get the money, so he tells MONARCH to stay there and not invent fashion, and in that he arrived from the capital of the Zon Kingdom at the Bill clan's large mansion, and a boy was thinking about GI. At that moment, after all, there was a banquet for him, but he only found out after it was over, and he says it could have been a request, but still the boy is his savior and says he wanted to meet him again, and he wonders when he will be able to find him and repay what he owes. So Jean arrives talking to Spare and then puts his hand over his mouth. Boy, so he doesn't scream and tell him to calm down. After all, Jean is the one who saved him from the 15 group, so he calms down. Asks how Jean got there, and he says that the boy told him to look if he needed help then. He says yes, he remembers, and how could he forget that, because if it wasn't for Jean, who knows what would have happened to him. So the boy says it's great, he's going to wait there, telling the boy to get some money and things valuable, and the boy gets wide-eyed seeing this, asking how is it Kijin. He says that the rule says that he needs to hide that he is a temporary flag bearer because he needs to improve his reputation with just his martial things and without the help of the clan. So it was natural that the young June Candle were extremely poor in the first and second month, since they were only taught how to fight, and until they managed to collect a reward from a wanted criminal or gather money from the mercenary, they were forced to experience poverty. But things were totally different for him. Ailey says that the food in the Zon Kingdom is not it's that bad, and she says she was prepared to go hungry for a few days just like the others' port banderas. But it was a great start thanks to him, and Murican starts are saying that yesterday she was talking to Jean asking if that it wasn't distortion, and he says that she had a great change of reaction, but she doesn't know what to say, and Jean says, which is not extortion. Saber was able to pay off his debt by giving him money, and Jean remembers the boy giving him a bag. Huge piece of gold, and Jean talks to Murican asking if he's sure he didn't eat too much. After all, the dragon has the beer belly. He says they are going to the transfer gate and asks what he will do if he vomits again, but the dragon tells him to shut up. After all, eating until full is the best thing in the life of a predator like he. However, Jean says that he's not a predator. Shit, after all, he would starve if it weren't for him, and the dragon says that if he doesn't want to see him vomiting, just hitch a ride with him. He asks why he insists on using the transfer gate. G starts talking that she herself can't handle the nausea of the movement, and he apologizes with his strawberry pie, and Jean says it's okay. Worried about the ice, but the problem is something else. After all, the place where they are going is the Aquam Kingdom, and he says that they are members of the Magic Grief Federation controlled by the Zivil clan, and about 80% of active dragons are in the side of Zipful, so flying on his back without permission is basically a declaration of war that Murican talks about. That more than half of those cowardly dragons would run away just hearing his name, and he says that Monty of those idiots is showing his wings around. The world has really become a good place to live, and Jim says that he has already warned Murican not to transform himself from the nothing on the streets. Then he also says that the Zippo clan is now maintained by dragons, and he says that the gods who created those dragons and Zerd Zipful who formed a contract with these gods, and he says that on the other hand Clan Candle, there's only him as a contractor, and he says that if his father hadn't been there, they would have finished with a Candle a long time ago. But notices that something is wrong because stopping to think how they gathered so many contractors, and he wonders if it is possible to bring together so many in a single generation. He says that this is far from being a mere coincidence, so he asks Jin's identity, and he realizes that he ended up thinking too much, and when they arrive he says he's Jean Grey and that's Jill Peon, and says that they are going to the Aquam Kingdom for tourism, and then they let them enter the place and say that soon teleportation to the kingdom will begin here, and G says that as expected from a clan identity they managed to enter without problems, and the boy says it's clear. After all, they said it was so well made that it could even fool the Vermont Special Forces, so the teleportation starts, and the Murican is all shaking as the boy remembers the Quim Kingdom, which was where he went in his past life. But now it's been 15 years, so they arrive in the kingdom, and the boy soon starts saying that. And before returning he passed the last year of his life in the capital of the kingdom, and he says it would be some good years in the future, but the scenario hasn't changed much. And street vendors and beggars can be seen everywhere, and people on the streets have expressions. Dark, and Jay says that this strangely dark city is such a beautiful day. But Jean thinks that everything is because of tyranny those bastards had, and he says he remembers hearing about how super bad it was during that period. He He tells them to find an inn first and then they will hunt for prey, and when he arrives at the place Murikin asks him if he is sure of them staying in such a bad place, and he says he's sure his young man has a plan, but Murak says they are full of money, they don't need to stay in a place like this, but Jim says he is sure things will be fine if they stay trying to make money, but it's going to be different in this life. He's the one who's going to use Jet this time while he's beaten like a convict. He says that if he continues he won't stay still, he may not seem like it, but he is a 5-star however. Murikin asks what he has to do with this, so Jay tells him it was bad, and it wasn't poison, it was a sleeping pill. But that doesn't improve anything, and he continues to fuss, and Jim thinks that this must be enough and calls Murak saying that they're gonna listen to him, but Murikin asks if he's trying to talk to the guy who tried to dope them, so Jet asks him to. He saves you, he will do anything to make up for his sins, and the Murikin tells him to shut up and not talk until he dies, and Jean says he's gonna ask a simple question and Jet will die if he lies, so he sends him tell the truth, and he will be played by humor, discretion, and instinct, and asks if he understands. He answers yes. Then Jim asks who he is, and he says he's Jet, the owner of this inn and an informant, but the boy seems to want to know more. So Jay says he scams people and does human trafficking. Then Murikin starts to get angry, and Jay asks him to be spared because he can be useful to Jean. He says he knows Kim like the back of his hand, he swears that, and he asks if he wanted to drug him and sell him. Then he says that's right and apologizes again, and the boy asks where they would sell it to him while he steps on and breaks Jet's hand. He starts crying, saying that they would sell it to the Tezen underground auction, so the boy tells him to be more detailed, and he continues saying that it is an auction operated by a shadowy organization called Tezen. They sell all slaves, drugs, goods, stolen contraband, and artifacts. Then Jim is happy to have found the Tezen auction. Then he says okay, and says he's going to cure Jet until dinner and asks if he knows what he's going to do afterwards, so Jet thanks him quickly. By his mercy and more camp per ronda, your boy will waste money healing that shit, and Jill says that he is right, because if he lets him continue living he might try to deceive him again. Jim talks about the underground auction of the shadowy organization, asked if there is a better opportunity than dismantling a place like that, and he says he won't. It's too late to get rid of him later, but Jill still stands back and tells him to trust him because they need a guide anyway, and he says he's going to come back and find someone to cure him. So they both think so. Very strange, and once outside Jean says it's tiring to pretend he doesn't know everything, but he says he has no choice, since he doesn't intend to tell anyone that he is regressing, and the doctor says that it would be better for him to rest until he is completely healed, and he tells them to call him if they need anything, and he is already amazed because, as expected from Magic Federation of Lotero, even the healer found on the streets is very skilled and starts to curse at them, because first they beat him and then they heal him. He asks who those guys are, and he thinks Jean would be a descendant of a large martial family or maybe even the special forces of Vermin, but he knows that whoever it is, if he kills them he will turn to dust, so Jean tells them to go there. He says they need to go to the underground auction, so already at the entrance Jet. He arrives with 3 more suspicious people, and they ask why Jet brought a crowd with him. He asks if they are products, but he already sends them to you. Be careful with his words and open the gates because they are your guests, so they do this, and from inside they come a musical feast. Then the Murican says that they are very funny, well, for an operated place. By rubbish the atmosphere is good, and I'm already telling you from up here the head of Tezen is a man known as Sala, but still there is someone above him, and he tells them to get masks because they better hide their faces while they are at the auction, and Jim asks who the real boss is, and I already told you that it's someone called a student or a hand of spiders, and he says that this place was decorated his way to hide the fact that he is a gangster with no manners, and he says that he rents. It's different from a little peon like him. He not only has the ability to control the dirty streets, but also an artist. 7-star martial artist, and I've already told you that according to rumors, he even has a connection with a blood candle Pure who live on the other side of the ocean, and Jean soon becomes interested in this gossip about his family, but Murican sends him. Ignore him, asking if he really thinks those guys are the type to hang out with rotten city trash, and Geely agrees with this because despite everything she doesn't think she has someone that foolish in the clan, but the boy says no. Because there is a person who he cursed so that he could not wield swords. He says that if there is someone connected to the Federation is this person, and he talks about the laminated illusion, a 9-star curse that stops you of using swords, and he says that although he thinks that a Malo who can cast such a strong curse would have a 10 years in the Castle of the Storm and 5 years in the Garden of the Sword, this is the only thing he can discover in these years, and he need to try to find out more ISO it costs, and he says that they came to that place with the intention of turning the place inside out, and he thinks it will be worth it to confirm Aloes' identity. And Murican asks what the plan and questions would be to get rid of all the gangsters on the first day here, and in that G says that the guards who he saw recently on the way, they seem to be very skilled. He says that there are also some people who seem to be unregistered mages, and she thinks they started a fight in the middle of enemy territory. It's not a wise idea, and he tells them not to worry, after all he has a plan, and she asks, what plan would that be? And he whispers in both of their ears. Then Murican says that sometimes he wonders what's going on in his mind, and asks him how he comes up with an idea like that, and he says it's a bit shocking. He asks if he really manages to do this like a run candle, and he tells them not to worry, and if anything happens to them they need to run. And then the Jet says it's that way, and says he purposely put them in a secret place, and tells them to be welcome at the Flower of Tezen, the underground auction, and the presenter says he will bring a new product, and says that it doesn't matter where I look they came or why they are there, and the first product are things that he can use it whenever and however you want, and there are slaves, so he says they are in good condition, and notices a guy in the background because it looks like it can be used for different jobs, and Jean asks if Jet wanted to sell them, so he says it was very foolish, and Jean thinks about the slaves because he must be happy, and at least they are not children, so more Camp Rhonda PR. Jinho, what do they do now? He simply tells them to wait because he heard that there are useful items in that auction, and he says that if something worth comes up he will take it for himself, and says that from then on they will start to move, and he thinks about the ring artifact, and if he is right in his information he must be rotting in their warehouse. Now he can pick it up after executing his plan, so they announce that now the auction is going to start for real, and Jim says that they just have to be patient and wait, and a week later Jet tells Jin that he spent a whole week just looking at the products, and if he doesn't buy anything that day the Tezen will possibly start to bother him, so Jay asks if it's not his job to do something about it, and he says yes, sending the boy acts whatever way he wants, so he thinks doing something nothing. If he continues like this he will be expelled. Regardless of who he is, he tells the boy to buy some shit before they bring him to his knees. One more thing appears. He says it is the first magical tome of the day, and says it is the magical tome of Matt Whack the wizard who once ruled the world, and he says that they can't decrypt what's in it, but surely there is great magic saved, and they start with 80 as a bid, and Jean thinks that it's not Matt though the Onak but Metho Mornak, calling him idiots. He says that all Tomas Danak are evil, so it's impossible for this to be true, and he says he doesn't even do one thing week since the auction started in Tezen, and they are already doing something like this. The presenter constantly talks nonsense, so he talks about next product, while Jean says that these idiot wizards tend to fall for these things, and the presenter says that the author from the next wizard it's Tsem, and he says that bidding should start with 50 gold coins, so Jean thinks he has some Tomas like that. They are not famous, but they are like a newly bought lottery ticket, so Murican plays the boy, saying that he needs to buy this because if it's the Tizen he knows is a good deal, so Jean raises his sign offering 150 coins, and they ask if there is a higher value, and everyone gets scared asking if the boy is from some very rich family. Says that a magical tome recommended by a dragon must be good, so it is sold to him. He says there's no reason to ask why, so the next magical tome was made by Shugher, that's for sure. Opens the boy's eyes, but the other people don't know who his is, so they say that first Sen, and now that's just the unknown items coming, but the boy in turn offers 200 gold coins, and everyone gets restless, asking who this guy is and why he's just buying strange things, so Murican asks if the boy knows that tome for him to start offering 200, and the boy says he thought it would be good to buy one more. But he thinks he never thought he would find this thing there, the clan of his master, the person who taught everything in his past life and he says he heard that her clan collapsed hundreds of years ago. G never imagined he would find something like that over there, so it's sold to the boy. Gil says he should give it to her as a gift when he gets meet again, and the boy says that's it for now, and they're gonna move, so the Murican starts reading that and says that it's really Tizen that he was thinking about, but he asks what's in it because it's a very strange and complicated cryptation, and Jean thinks it's, of course, because the only ones who can understand what is written are him and his master, and Jet is happy that he actually bought something because it would be really bad if he hadn't bought anything again today, so the boy talks to Jet saying he's going to meet Lu the spider hand, then he asks what he is doing. After all, this is not possible even if he is a customer. Hello should be unreachable, but the boy tells him to talk to him and says begin. Zipful wants to see him, and when Jet hears that name his heart almost comes out of his mouth. He starts running around cursing everything, and he concludes that the boy is not from the special forces of Vermond but a Zipful of pure blood, and he says that this is great, and if he gets Zipful's favor he will be able to get out of there. So he goes out, breaking down the door, telling Lu to go talk to him, saying that Button Zipful is looking for the guy. He says that that's a good thing, but inside nobody likes his approach. Everyone gives the crazy person dirty looks. But then, after someone goes to meet Jean asking if he is the Edge and tells him to follow him because the boss wants. He sees, but the boy punches that security guard in the face and says he has to be joking, and he summons a very threatening fireball in his hand asking if he is hello, and the man says no, and he says the boss wants for him to escort them to his room. But the boy continues with the fireball and is on top of him saying that he revealed his name and he is still treated like this, and he leaves a message telling Lu to go there herself, crawling on all fours to his feet. So Lu actually goes to the boy's feet saying that he is the one who takes care of the house. He says that he failed not to. Recognizing that he resides in the sky above this earth, he asks for forgiveness and begins to think that if someone had spoken be a Bradinho Zippo he would have laughed, but the boy is different, his aura is different, and he also has that ball of fire that he used earlier, and he says that it was at least at the 5-star mana level, and to get using mana from 5-star Nest City would be difficult for anyone other than a Zibble. And a week ago Jinho talks, who will pretend to be a Baradinho, and he says that even if Lore knew someone related to Zipple it would just be a mere servant, and means that he cannot prove that he is not a Bradinho. But Jay thinks that the problem is not he would be exposed or not. If the family discover this in the future, or even Patriarch, she doesn't know what could happen. So Jean tells him to get up, and the guy immediately obeys. Jean tells him to take a look at it. He asks what he thinks it is, then Lu says they are tomes. Magicians. He apologizes because he asked for old magical tomes without Zipful's permission, so he says that the 2 tomes he brought there are highly valued by his family. He asks how much money he made that way. Then Lu starts to despair, asking for forgiveness because he is a martial artist. He was stupid enough not to. Recognizing the value of the books ended up bothering him. He says he will do his best to recover them. So he asks a chance. Then Jiu asks if he doesn't think it would be better for him to recover it himself instead of leave it to people like them, and then he tells Luca to shut up and give him the account book and the client list because his family is going to start an investigation tomorrow, and the moon goes into shock thinking that this is the end. That Bir more than Thesis understands in the Kingdom Kim they are just a local gang compared to Zipple. He says that if something appears during the investigation crit Zipple, it will be the end of the Thesis. So while they are investigating, and he says that it's all he has at auction, so he asks if there is more, and Lu says yes, there are others stored in the warehouse, but they are at the employee's house, and if he leaves it with him temporarily, he can bring him immediately. So he says that it will take up to 2 hours, but Jean asks what the fuck he is trying to do because he is going to destroy documents important and then see if he is real and why he is looking at the guys he bribed, and the boy tell him to go ahead and do whatever he can. But he must not forget that he is in the palm of Jin's hand, and even with a lot of hate, he says he'll be right back, so he tells him to drive around the warehouse while he's gone. And he orders his subordinate to keep him inside the mansion until he returns, and he leaves there cursing Jean. After all, he's acting all arrogant like that, and he wonders if the boy is trying to say that he's in control of everything that happens. He says he spent a lot money with Zipful. He will get anything he can to buy them back. In the meantime, Murikan okay, making a mess, telling Strawberry Pie to get whatever he wants, but she asks if everything is okay, and he says there's probably nothing there that hasn't been stolen, so he says it's just trash. But he asks the boy about that student guy, and he tells him that he will realize that he is not true as soon as he returns, and he is curious about what Jean will do, so he asks what the dragon wants. Say they're just doing free shopping and running away before he comes back so he can finally find the ring she was looking for, and G asks if they're going to keep doing reckless things like that and says she's still very surprised, but Jean says she will take this as a compliment, and then Jet appears shouting for Jean, saying that he found the slave account document. What he asked, he wrote down all the ages and places of birth, so he says it was a good job and that they ended up there, and the guard says that the boss will arrive soon with them free from accounting, so he should wait at the mansion until then. But Jean simply shoots the guy down, but Jet is incredulous at what is happening and tells him that he is incredible because he can not only cast magic but can also fight, and he wonders why the boy is hitting his student's subordinate. So Jim asks if Jet has a family. He says yes, he has a son. So the boy tells him to take him and run away, preferably to the Vermont Empire, and Jet is surprised by this. Jay send him give accounts to the Empire and present himself as an informant because it is the only way for him to live, but Jet begins to denies, saying that he will stay by the boy's side until the end, and he thinks he worked very hard for this chance and asks the boy to let him serve in his great deeds alongside him for the rest of his life, and he thinks he wants be successful at least once, but Jean apologizes, saying that he is not Began Zibble and the world of Jet. He simply falls to the floor asking how it is. Then 2 hours later, one of the subordinates says he heard something via the Zipfel hotline earlier. Then Zipfel had long gray hair, so he calls his boss and hello tell him to keep talking, and he says that they took the information about the slaves and the other customers, so they ran away, saying that the Tezen is over and Aloe, much more than a kid, orders them to be persecuted while his subordinate makes sure to read him. He has the guy on the wall and tells them to catch whoever is left and bring back those lying bastards, he says, who will finish them off with his own hands. So Murican asks the boy if he has any reason to be wandering around because he doesn't think so, that there is nothing good to be gained by messing with Hello. So Jean says that he needs to see if he is connected with June Candle, so the dragon says that's right, and he says he'll think about it while they say goodbye before leaving, and he says that the boy got Shem's grimoire and even a masterpiece, and says he almost freaked out seeing that in the boy's brothers. As soon as they left the auction, he asks how he knew something that old and managed to get it, and while they are talking, a red light appears in the sky and they recognize that they are there, and Jean soon gets up talking that they are going to have a little chat, and then Luz arrives there saying that he is calling them scammers, asking if they really thought they would be able to fool the student and escape. He said he would hang him in the market and do as an example to the others, and he will show what happens when you mess with the boss of Tezal Luo Daranya. So the Jean starts to say that the record that has the name of V's kidnapped slaves Vermont was rewritten, and he says that the transaction book with the ancient grimoire that the Zip family is looking for, as well as the client register that lists all the nobles who made Vista thick for them, he spread this around the world, and until tomorrow the whole world will be watching him, and he says that the magic mail is something very convenient, and to be honest it ended for him, so he starts to get irritated with the kid, saying he's not going to give him a quick death, he's going to tear him apart alive, and every time he faints from pain he will wake him up by burning him with flames. So the boy talks to the Murican, saying he wants to go against him. Only then the Murican takes the lead, going to face all the rest of them, and he starts calling the boy, asking if he thinks he can win alone, and tells everyone not to stand still, and he says he only wants the boy alive, he must kill everything else. But when they attack the Murican, he can simply easily defeat them with one hand movement, and continues defeating several of them as he walks, and everyone who stops in front of him is defeated with just one blow, and he continues making his line to the point that opponents begin to fear coming close. Then Lu asks what they are waiting for to attack, but they say that if they use their magic now they will end up hitting their allies, so Lu tells them to aim and asks Guile to move away, and when they invoke their magic they launch it at the boy, but he realizes that everyone is below 5 stars and only his necklace can stop all the attacks. He says that his wife has become a little easier thanks to his sister Luna, and says that despite all this he left without even saying goodbye to her. In the meantime, Murican starts to let loose, saying that they are weak and have nothing but numbers, so he starts to invoke his flames and orders everyone to die at once and raises the ground with his flames, and Lu in turn is left with a guy looking at all that and starts laughing, Igeo the psychopath, right after he launches a crosscut and everyone. The others ask what happened to their boss. They say that the boss went crazy, and Jean in turn thinks that if he was crazy will save work, and Murican tells the boy that he already took care of everyone just as he asked, so he can stay at I feel like it now, and Lu starts asking who sent them there, asking who is behind this, but Murican says it's none of his business, after all he's going to die anyway, so he attacks Jean with a very quick cut, and Lu he says he won't know if the boy tells the truth and asks what he's going to do because he doesn't intend to lose Ollie, and Murican says the boy will finally found someone worthy of fighting, and he says that the rumors that Lu was a 7-star martial artist were true, and he says that this crazy person is different from the guy he fought against before. After all, this one is dying to kill him, and he tells the boy to do what he can, and he doesn't. Dika. Music. See music. Then Hello starts calling the boy arrogant, asking how dare he come to a direct confrontation being a mage. He asks if he's taking it off. Then Jean takes out his sword and throws it at him, and he realizes there's something wrong with it. Wrong because the wizard is using a sword. He tries to hit the boy, but he manages to dodge, and he finally realizes that Jean wasn't a wizard, so he attacks the boy again, increasingly angrier, and then Jean leaves, managing to stop his attacks until he tries to hit him, and Lu disappears, appearing behind the boy. He is surprised by this but manages to dodge the attack, but still receives a superficial cut from it. Then he realizes that the moon is very fast, and he bets that the guy isn't even taking it seriously, but he's still in trouble, and then the gang asks if the fireball at the auction was from an artifact, and then he thinks he got himself into this for such a simple scam. He says that the problem isn't the kid, it's that guy who killed all his servants alone, because he's sure that would lose to him, and he wonders why Murakin is just looking, and besides looking he is making fun of the boy, and Jill asks if Murak will just watch, and she says she knows what Jean asked for, but she asks if born too much for him to fight a 7-star alone. Murakin tells Strawberry Pie that everything is fine after all. He needs to learn to value his own life, so she says that this is true, and he also asks if she still thinks the kid is going to lose, and she gets scared about it, so Jink manages to deflect his sword. Alu, but his eyes widen seeing his next attack, and he shouts that it's the end of the boy, but Murakin gives a laugh, saying that in the past, when swordsman magicians run Candle, a difference of 2 predominated. Stars was nothing, so Jean activates that fireball again, throwing the burning row. Pa and Yalu that he can defend, noticing that it wasn't an artifact, and he realizes that the boy is a magical swordsman, so Jean drops his cape and begins to invoke electrical power by sticking his sword into the ground and invoking lightning, and then he leaves on top of Alu with different rays, and he says that this is rude, saying that if he keeps his guard so low he will die in the blink of an eye. But the boy continues to stand still, storing more and more spiritual power in his ring. When he summons his helmet, and Lu tries to attack him but notices that there is something strange because he sees the boy with a black helmet in his head and asks what the fuck is that, and he takes his sword out of the ground, throwing it at Lu and cutting him in half, and the boy just appears behind him, deactivating half of his helmet, and sees Lu falling, and after making his helmet, Murakin says that how he thought that is Milta's rune, and G asks what that is, and he says that it is an artifact created a few thousand years ago, and he was created by a demon named Milta for her lover, the first emperor of Vermund, and he says that in the past it was an infinite war. He also says that this is a masterpiece that protects from attack by 7 stars below. However, he asks how this ended up in the hands of bandits, so the boy remembers Milta's rune, says that it was an object that was only revealed to the world 5 or so years later with an offering to the Emperor of Vermont, and he says that the media academics couldn't stop talking about Elmo, and that made the boy remember where he was first found, and then he asks her to answer one thing before he dies. He asks if it's true that he has connections with Hun Candel, and Murakin says that the boy confused things by asking why he's trying get an answer from a crazy man on the brink of death, but Lu starts laughing, saying that now he understands everything. He is Jean Run Candel, and Lu says that she heard him say that he had failed. He says that it is true, but he is merely the youngest son, and he won't be able to stop that person, so Jin keeps asking himself what the fuck that guy is saying, but he also notes that Spider Wool is probably not his real name. He says he will investigate that man because he wasn't just a 7-star martial artist resorting to controlling a black clan like he seemed be connected with a Candle. However, Murakin says that this is not strange. After all, one of his ancestors even had a bar, even though it's 9 stars. He says that he still needs to find out that he's that person that Lu mentioned. After all, Candle is a clan that he will lead in the future, so he needs to do this, and he keeps thinking in the student speech where he says he had failed, and also when he says he wouldn't be able to stop that person, and he says that if he failed it's because he knew who he was, so what failed was the illusion of the blade. He says that the fact that he said he wouldn't be able to stop that person because he's younger is because it has to do with the battle for hegemony with his brothers and him. He says he's going to get Iona out of this since she's completely given up on the house and it's not like she's the twin brothers. Nor is there. 1,000 yen, they are too young and inexperienced to have an influence like that. He says that the rest of them are not as smart or diligent enough to do something like that, and someone who is sensitive to hegemony and would do something after recognize his talent would probably be the future successor Joshua Runkandel, and he says he is the only likely suspect. Whether he is jumping to conclusions or not will soon be revealed. So already in the other day, the newsboy starts saying that Tezen fell during an investigation between Zipfel and Vermont, and they say that the IGNA organization that tormented people fell in a single day. So Jean says that Jet did his job well. He says he's sure he was threatened by Zipfel and Vermont, but it's a mere small price to pay for his life. And Murikan says that that trash deserved worse, but he says that finally the credit is going to the Zipfel and the Vermond, but the one who profited the most was Jean himself. He says it's true because he got the ring and the tomes. Magicians who even dueled against a 7-star knight, but Geely calls him out saying that not all 7-star knights are the same and he can't just let his guard down just because he defeated Lu. She says he should be more careful next time. He says yes because he still can't face something superior like Gil herself, and he understands that and will take more. Be careful next time, and he says that now he doesn't think anyone is going to come after him, all because of Jet, and he says that they can go to their next destination without any problems, and she asks where they are going, and he says he is going to the city free of Taiken, and Jay asks if he is thinking about Taiken because of the 7-colored peacock. He says, and that's right, but Murikan doesn't know what that is, and he explains that there is a group of giant information traffickers there, and he says that they are considered the most reliable after Runkandel Zipfel and the Vermont Information Agency. Then Murikan asks if he intends use them like he used Jet so he can choose who should die, and Murikan says it's not a bad idea, and the boy agrees with this. They soon set sail, and Jean says that he needs an organization that justifies his actions to guile Murikan, this while he follows his memories in the face of regression, and the boy says that it's not just this is because he also has a lot of things that he needs to investigate because he still has the confusion of the Vist that Ivillian, Bouvard and King Zello, and he also talks about Alu's past, which may be connected with the June Candle ruins, Cologne and forbidden magic, which is why Taiken is the best place thanks to the 7-colored peacock. So Murikan talks to the boy saying that he discovered what magic Tsen left behind. He says that it seems to be light magic, so the boy is surprised by this because he thought that they were all lost since ancient times, but the dragon says that this is no big deal. Kitsen and Zipfel, they were enemies in the past. He says that erasing those they considered problematic from history is a specialty of the Zippel clan, and that's probably why there are no records, and he says that if Jay doesn't manage to reach the peak of energy, spiritual, Clan Candel will end up with a similar fate, and the dragon tells him that learning this now will be important for the future, so the boy asks if he will show it to him now because he likes how Murikan he's pulling his sleeves, and the dragon tells him to cheer up because this is probably the magic he'll need most right now. Then he shows a black ringon in his hand and tells him to look carefully and pay attention, and he keeps looking closely, wondering if it's light magic, and then a flashbang hits him in the face, leaving the boy almost blind, and Murikan starts to laugh at him, saying that he only took a look, but it seems that the boy swallowed his eyes, and Jim wonders why he did this but says that the dragon is right, it can be used to attack, defend, and he says yes because this is called photo cannon and the most precious Zen mate. He says that now the boy managed to understand compared to that magical tome H or whatever. He asks what did he find, and the dragon, he says it's encrypted in a way that even irritates him. He says he doesn't know what's there, but maybe could be useful for the boy, so Jean tells him to leave it alone. He says that someday they will end up finding one. Cryptolysis. He lands in the free city of Taiken, and they say that this is a really beautiful place, and he is told that this is a city located on a small island in the southeast of the central continent, a city not affiliated with J.A. Candel Zipfel or any other faction. He says that its population may be small, but it is a famous tourist spot thanks to the wonderful view of the ocean present anywhere in the city, and they say that the city seems to be full of life, saying that it has a concept perfect in a free city, and asks him why they don't look for an inn first, and the boy tells them to go to the city center, but then the Murikan transforms from the cat asking if he's not going to choose a shitty place. New, and the boy tells Murikan, who has already told him millions of times to stop transforming in the middle of the city, but he retorts by telling him boy who has said a million times that humans are not interested in others, but a little girl appears, saying that the cat turned into a person, and she says that the black cat turned into a guy in black, and she asks how he did it. That's when they start to get scared because the girl is asking them to teach her this, just like me or her, is holding a dragon kite, but then they start trying to trick the girl saying that she was mistaken because as a cat would become a person, and she says that she is not you but Yuria. She says that she was not mistaken, the black cat became that dude. She asks why you're lying. He says he's not lying and he's not a gentleman either, but AG continues, saying that he is lying and he is also a gentleman, and Jim says that he already gave her a lollipop, so just for her. She doesn't pretend she didn't see it, but she tells him not to ask her to lie, so Gilly asks what they do, saying, who are going to take the girl to the guards since she seems to be lost, but these rumors spread and they end being found by Zipful, but Murican asks Strawberry Pie not to worry, saying that who would believe a child, but she looks at him very seriously, saying that this wouldn't be a problem if he had simply listened to the young master, and then I noticed them arriving until the guards and says she doesn't like them, and Gilly asks what happened, and the girl keeps saying she doesn't like them because they bother her and make things difficult for her mother, so Jill says she has a bad feeling about this, asking if they are a group that is and uses violence against the citizens, but say that there is a chance that the girl's mother is a criminal and say that they will go in to check. Then they recognize Yuria and the guard tells them to call the boss because Yuria has arrived, so Jim asks if the guard meets this girl and he says yes, they are acquaintances after all, she is his boss's daughter, so he stays in disbelief at this, and soon the girl's mother arrives. Rijinho, looking at that woman, realizes that being head of the guard, it's not her only job, and she's huge, full of muscles and with a not-so-good face, but she laughs, running to Yura with a smile on her face. Then the two hug and she tells her daughter that she already told her not to go too far, but the girl says that her mother doesn't play with her and she apologizes, telling her daughter that she will play a lot after work, and she asks if she promises that. They continue in this super cute scene while the three of them don't know how to react to all that, and the boss says that since most people in the city know Yuria, she was a little careless, and asks apologies for the late introduction, saying that he is Taiken's chief of defense to Elizabeth, and in this the boy introduces himself as Jing Gray and says he came to Taiken for tourism, and the boss says she needs to thank him, asking if he has something that is necessary. He asks her to recommend a good inn, but when she was about to speak, the girl arrives to speak in her mother's ear and tell her something. Then Elisa asks for a paper and a pen and writes something to the boy, saying, which is a production letter with his badge as boss, and says that any place will welcome him if he shows. She thanks him again for finding her daughter, and the boy says it was nothing and he should be the one to thank, so they leave, and her mother talks to the girl again, asking if a cat really turned into that man, and she says yes, but they didn't want to admit it. So she blurted it out, and Elisa says she did a good job after all. Everyone has a secret or two, so she thinks about the transformation. After all, this is something only dragons are capable of. And when she arrives at the inn, Gilly says that the service is incredible, and also says that the only place she received treatment like that was in Hoofer, and the Murican says that bed is comfortable for, and that's how a guest house must be. She says it's power. In the introduction letter, he says that everything will be fine in Taiken. After all, they have been very lucky since they arrived, and taking advantage of the cool weather, she asked to try that lollipop she gave her for the flight. After all, she heard about it. Taiken is famous for them. He says she doesn't need to ask for something like that, telling the girl to just be comfortable, and she leaves, and Murican says that this is refreshing because it's as if they were really on a trip, and in this he asks the boy how he plans to find the much-acclaimed seven-colored peacock, as he doesn't seem to be easy to find, and the boy says that he is planning to look for someone else first, and he thinks of the seven-colored peacock, the biggest information trafficker, Intika, and at the center of it all there is a man called Kashmir. The ghost Blade Jin says he is such a swordsman. It is known that even Iram Kandel tried to offer him a position as an instructor for beginner cadets, and that's all the public knows about him. And 10 years later, Kashmir reveals that he is a DP Prince of Vermont, and use the information he gathered from the seven-color peacock, his sovereignty is recognized by Vermont, Zipful and Hun Kandel, and thus becoming the first governor in the city free of Taiken. And he says that he is someone not only skilled in swordsmanship but also able to hide and prepare for a long time, and he says that it could be that this Man helps him with the peacock, but he keeps wondering how he could create a connection with it, but soon someone climbs the stairs. And Jilly runs in saying that there is something wrong there. After all, there is not a single person inside the inn. She says that not only the other customers but also all the employees are gone, and she says something is wrong. Then someone touches the girl's shoulder and that person asks if he can come in, and then looking at him touching the girl's shoulder. Strawberry Pie, the Murican goes crazy and Jean recognizes him as using the phantom blade and asks why he but. As he speaks, Murican runs out and sticks to the wall, grabbing it and breaking it with his fingers, and the only thing Jean has time to talk so that Murican stops and doesn't kill him if Murican didn't lock everything he had to lock. I'm a stainless steel refrigerator with 3 doors, so while he looks at Kashmir half-T transformed, he asks if he didn't want to know who they are, and the man gets upset looking at that, and he says, well, they're not that cool, kid. This shape of the Murican is very absurd, my god. This look, then this look, these teeth. Oh my god, what beautiful art. And then Jay asks why Kahim is there, and he says there shouldn't be anything for do here, and he also says that they haven't caused any confusion since they arrived in Taiken, and more importantly, that's why he's not alone. He came with a lot of people, and like this, they're gonna get a bad beating. So Jean tells them, Murican, that the place is very small, and if he fights there, Jill could get hurt. And when he talks about Jill, the dragon returns to the normal, and he asks Kashmir if he knows who he is. But with Kashmir frozen, Dragon starts to get pissed. Asking him why he's being so informal, he says all this while he's holding ice in his arms, and he asks if Kashmir underestimates everyone because he has a sword tied to his waist and walks around with his servants, and he's like happy because he finally held back. Then Kashmir starts saying that that's not what he meant, but the dragon is still pissed and asks what did he want to say because he invaded out of nowhere and put this in, and tells him to answer, asking that he knows who he is, but Kashmir keeps talking. No, and the dragon continues to be even more pissed off, and Jean finally tells him to stop, saying that that's enough, and he says that the authorities are not after him, so he tells him to calm down and put away his sword. Regina recognizes him as Kashmiri Blade Ghost and says that heard a lot about him, he knows him very well, so he asks how he knows his name. He also asks who he is, and the boy introduces himself as Jean Run Candle, and everyone is surprised that he is introducing himself like that, and the boy says it seems like he has a lot to talk to him, so call him somewhere else because he will answer everything the questions. And now only with the 4G thanks him for dismissing his soldiers because it seems like he trusts him. But Kashmir starts saying that he brought his soldiers after receiving a report about a dragon appearing, but it was a mistake after all. It made him even angrier, and he says he's sure that crazy guy is a dragon. After all, that intense pressure doesn't. It was from a human, and he says that if the boy hadn't stopped him, everyone would have died, and he says that that woman with sure it's Jill MCR. He says he met her before, it was after the Vermin Palace, and he still remembers the military prestige she showed in the training camp back in the day, but he can't feel any trace of her aura, and he asks if it has a connection with both of them, so he goes back to talking to Jean, confirming that he says he is Jean Run Candle. He says it looks like he's not lying, but he has a question about it, and he wonders why the boy is with the dragon after all. Since ancient times, dragons have made contracts with wizards who have a contract with the god or someone who has a power special, for example, not a candle but a zipful, so he asks if the boy's family knows he has one dragon, and the boy says they don't know, so Kashmir says if this gets out his family won't stand still. But he says that he is telling this secret that could cost his life. Without hesitation, he says that the most important thing is not the fact that he is a candle, but because Kashmir came V on the dragon, and then he says that since the boy told him a big secret, he will also tell you. He talks about his daughter Yuria, who he met, and the reason he came there is that she said that a cat turned into a person, and Jim asks if he believed the words of a child. He says that his daughter is not a normal child. He says she is a social worker, so the boy asks if he is talking about God of Vision. He says it's him because there's no way his daughter, his contractor, saw anything wrong. Then Jim says that he should know that he has so many powerful people in the world that he would like to be Asmal's contractor, and he asks if Kashmir has sure to tell him something like that easily, but Murican says that there is something wrong there because if she is a contractor, where is her dragon? He says he didn't feel any dragon energy near the girl. He says dragons of Yasmal are known for valuing their contractors a lot, but leaving a child alone is something strange. Then Jim says he doesn't know what the situation is, but it seems to be that, and Kashmir says the boy hit the nail on the head. Her guardian dragon suddenly disappeared a year ago. He says it looks like Zipful or the Vermont Empire had something to do with him, but it's just a theory. But Murikan says that it doesn't make sense because there isn't a dragon in this world dumb enough to be kidnapped, and he says it would get worse if it were for you. But he realizes something. You realize, seeing that his daughter is only 5 years old, he says that's it. So if the child really is a Asmil's contractor, means that if her dragon isn't nearby, right in the city, she'll soon go crazy or lose her mind. Bed for the rest of his life. So Kashmir is shocked by this, asking what he is talking about, and Murikan tells him, listen well, because Asmil contractors can see the future and humans don't know about it, but seeing the future is a great tool of a dragon's mindset, and right now it's too new to differentiate between dreams and reality. So nothing much happened if she continues to see the future without protection like now after a year or two. Her eyes will become uncontrollable. So Jean tells Murikan to explain it properly, and he asks if the girl continues seeing the future, she will end up in bed, and the dragon says that this is related to the principle of causality. The one who sees the future must follow what it saw, and as soon as they don't do that, the punishment of the 1000 will begin. And if someone sees the future of someone else's death, he can't do anything. The contractors who interfere with the principle of causality will end up being destroyed. He says that from the beginning his daughter was living in a different world from the one they are in now. He says that seeing from the look on his face, it seems like it's true, and he says that Kashmir needs to find the guardian dragon as soon as possible and put around her. There is no other way, so he kneels to the dragon, saying that although the manager didn't mention it, he is the leader of the 7-Color Peacock Information Center, and he says he is confident about his abilities. However, for a whole year he was unable to find his daughter's guardian dragon, and then Murikan says that he's sure that finding his daughter as soon as they arrived Chikan wasn't a mere coincidence. Asmil is asking to help his young contractor, so Kashmir starts asking him for a favor, but he says that's not it, because he won't do anything even if he asks him. He says he has to ask his leader, pointing to the boy who is behind him, asking what he's going to do. Then Jean comes close to Kashmir, telling him to get up, because although their relationship is recent and involves the life of a child, and tells him to first be rational because they will look for the guardian dragon of Uria together. And Kashmir, already emotional, says that he will never forget the young man's kindness. Master, and the boy thinks that he cannot be satisfied even if things are going better than he planned, because not even the 7-Colored Peacock he managed to discover the whereabouts of the dragon, and he says that this means they need to form the Zipful family or run Kandel and Somor Camp Ronda. For the boy, if Taikan is also with Zivil, and he says no, because Chikan is just a city they are not affiliated with no one. So the dragon says this is great and asks Kashmir if they are really good with information, which he questions if they would have information about dragons, and he says yes, they know which continent has the most dragons. So Murikan says that's great, they should talk about what dragons are in the Vermont Empire. So Jin Susta Murikan says that this method is kind of a last resort. He says that normally there is nothing that dragons don't know. So in a hut someone talks to Cantel, telling her to see this. So she asks Enya what happened, and Enya starts talking about Jin's news, saying that he is incredible because he is almost the same age as her and is already at 5 stars, and that Cantel says too, where she is also a contractor of a god and she could be like him. But the girl is left wondering if she really that would be it, and Cantel says yes, because unlike the boy in the family whose guardian is a guy with black hair, she is the contractor. Tyola, the god of time, is much more. But as she was about to complete her sentence, she feels a presence and tells Enya to go home and not leave until she comes back. She asks if anything happened, and what Cantel says it's nothing big, it's just that something dark came there, and this Manrose design is absolutely incredible. Look at this, Cantel. And then Murikan starts flying over the sea, telling the boy that they are almost there. He will come closer and release his energy, then the dragons in Vermont will come on their own. He sends the boy hides very well, and Jean agrees with that, and he stops standing and says that he will start by releasing his aura to every corner. Then Jean remembers Kashmir giving a list of all the active dragons in Vermont. Then, while Murikan notices the names that are on the list, he notices Vert and K. Cantel and gets a little excited, but tells Jean that it will work, and Jean asks if anything happened, and he says it was nothing because it could be a bit, but tell them to go quickly. After all, they have a long way to go. And so Kahim tells him to wait while calling him a great dragon, but Murikan stays. Kid, Tell him to call her by her name because he's not the leader of a weird cult, so the Kashmir answers that, and say thank you to the dragon because he's going to entrust his daughter with the island. So before leaving, Murikin says what he's going to say. Two things for him. Rin in the present thinks he pretends not to care about others, but his black dragon is well attentive. Then he says that the dragons are coming and two of them come very quickly. He recognizes them as Labo and one Teal, and he says that he already ended their race before, so he tells the boy to equip his helmet because he will hide like that. And Jim asks how much he hit them for them to come just because they felt the energy, and Murikin says that in the past, bastards who entered his territory were immediately beaten, so he says this is good for the dragon. But the other Earth dragon asks why he is there, and the Murikin says that there is something he needs to do later. Who woke up from his long sleep and asks for help, and the dragon starts to wonder whether or not they tell him something. Then the dragons talk to him saying they don't know what he's after, but now is not the best time, and they ask him to. He can save himself by telling him to hurry up and get out of there because he has his young contractors in that area, and Atil doesn't want to cause trouble in the Vermont seas, and Murikin starts to ask how they used to send him away. Because there is no place in the sky where he cannot be, so the dragon says he is a pain in the ass and he can't stand it. But telling him to get away from there because the energy he is releasing is causing chaos, he asks what the dragon is up to. Talking, and he talks about Cantel. She is flying there right now to kill there, and the dragon realizes he messed up. Jean says that if it's which Cantel they're talking about, are they talking about the silver dragon? Jean asks, what is Murikin's relationship with the guardian dragon of the god of time? Comes back, and Murikin says that she is like his ex, and Jean is incredulous that he is listening, and the dragons beg their boss to just leave because their contractors are still young, and if they fall in the crossfire they could die. And then another threatens him, saying that the other dragons don't know that he's awakened, and if he doesn't go now there will be rumors, but when they notice it's already over. Too late, and the dragon tells Jin to hold on, and a gigantic beam comes towards them where Murikin can only divert, and so the Earth dragons leave from there saying that they are going to curse Murikin. Jim is wondering what is happening, but Murikin tells him not to lose his concentration because there's more coming, and other rays appear in his direction. He keeps dodging everyone by a 3, and Jim realizes that this is an ultimate ability that is at the 8-star level or even higher. He asks, how many of these can they use at once? And the dragon screams for Murikin, saying that not even death will be enough at him, and she asks how dare he appear there, and then Jean asks if they need to fight this monster now, and Murikin says he thinks so, and Jean tries to understand more about his ex's story by asking how long he stayed with her. He says he stayed 500 years in human years, 1-5, and he gets straight to the point, saying that when to be able to do so, he must put the Bradamanti in her, and we ask me if she isn't exaggerating a bit, being his ex, but Murikin says that it seems like the boy doesn't know. After all, he doesn't hang out with those who are inferior to him, and so when the situation gets ugly, he gathers his strength at once and causes destruction, and he says he has to do all this to get it right. Then he puts himself in front of her, and Cantel says that even if he wants to run away it's too late, and she transforms in his dragon form, which by the way is very incredible, and says he's going to kill him there in that sea. So Murikin starts to ask Cantel to calm down. After all, he knows she hates him, but now that's not important. He says they need to take care of something urgently and then talk. But she doesn't even want to know and starts attacking him. Continues chasing the Murikin, then he is hit and almost goes flying while he barely has time to stabilize himself. She bites him again, and he asks her why she's so upset, but she obviously doesn't respond and keeps hitting him at him, and then tries to throw a lightning bolt to burn clothes, and he says that from this distance it will be difficult, but he is not hit, and when she looks up there is a dark ball on top of the dragon, and it absorbs all that spiritual energy, and he asks her what she did, and she says he's a fool because he doesn't know how weak he's become, and she says he's very mistaken if he thinks he's the same as before, and he asks her to stop for old time's sake, and he says he only came there because he needed to ask her something. Talks about old times because if she thinks about it, tearing it up in one piece won't be enough, and when she comes back attacking him, he holds her and bites her Asa and tells her to calm down, asking why she is exaggerating so much when the only thing they did was break up, but apparently she doesn't think it was just breaking up, and saying that that's exactly why he's being beaten. He doesn't understand why, but takes advantage of an opening by sending the boy on top of Kay Cantel, and then he throws himself at her. She is impressed that he is a human. He thinks the scale Hers is rigid enough that not even Murikin can bite it, and it will be difficult for him to be able to pierce her, but with a small opening and with what's left of Murikin's shadow energy, he'll be able to do something, so he imbues everything in the sword and sends a release of energy from the shadows, placing the sword on the dragon's wing and making enough force to pull it out, and not only does the wing fly away, but so does Kay Cantle's arm. So Murikin runs to help the boy as she falls into the water, and Murikin says it looks like he ran out of energy, but it was a good work, but the only thing he can think about is that he just became a dragon slayer out of nowhere. But Huracan, he says that now they have to wait and see if she has calmed down a little. Mag is surprised, asking what he is talking about and asking if that wasn't enough, and Murikin says that a normal dragon would have died, but when is Cantel different, and dragons that can manipulating time do not die easily, and in this they see several gears appearing beneath them and notice that maybe they may end up disappearing long before they can find the lost dragon. So after Cantel returns in the time, her arm returns to her body, and Jean asks if she really came back, and the Murikin says that's why the authority and magic are different things, but he tells the boy not to worry too much, and although it is a deception, it consumes a lot of magical power too, but he sends the boy just in case and doesn't move a single finger. So Cantel returns to his human form, and he asks if she has calmed down a little, and he says that he didn't know that she had resentments to the point of going crazy, and he asks her if they didn't end well, but she starts saying that he left her and they didn't even have the chance to talk, and she asks if that's what he calls a good ending, but he says she got mad when he was talking about breaking up, and he says that honestly he didn't cheat and he only ended it because his personalities don't match. Then Jean stands in the middle of it, asking if this is really a conversation about dragons that have lived for thousands of years. So Murikin throws everything up, saying he didn't come there to fight, he just came to ask her something. But first, she asks her question, asking if that human is the welding contractor, but Murikin says it doesn't matter. After all, one of them is in danger now, but Cantel doesn't like his speech asking about who one of them would be, because he is very despicable. After all, he also killed so many dragons, and she asks what he is talking about now, asking if he is playing with her and if she thinks about how many dragons died by his hand, but he says that yes, among them was the mortal enemy of her older brother, who he says that for his revenge he killed someone he didn't know and had nothing against him, and then he gets tired saying it's his fault for wanting to ask something for her and says that she should have asked another dragon. Then she starts calling him and asking him wait, and says that whenever she sees him he gets all emotional and says that he can ask, and apologizes for what he said. Then he says that recently one of the dragon's guardian of ASM disappeared. She is in doubt about it, asking, what do you mean it disappeared? And if he's talking about the ICT later, he says that must be the name. Then Jean realizes that now I'm getting to the main topic, but Cantel says this is strange. After all, that child was taken by a Verita not long ago. He remembers who is Verita the wind dragon, and he says he is one of Melzer's dependents, the god of wind and also guardian dragon, from the deputy head of the Zipfel family, Andre, and he asks if this is a Zipfel thing again, and Cantel says he is sure that they were going to teach draconic magic to the later, and she says that she thinks they should get out of there because if they come back soon they can avoid the trap and go to Vermont, and she calls them both to go to her house and get there. They go to a forest on the outskirts of the capital, and Jean says he couldn't introduce himself before saying be the contractor of Soldat, and Kay Cantel asks if he is a descendant of Timar and the youngest run Candel Jean. Then he asks how she knew, but Cantel asks how she wouldn't know when he has the same time to fear, and she says that the three of them were together a lot 1 year ago. She says she just guessed he was the youngest, and Dragon's reaction. Guardian was great, so she gets straight to the point, saying that Verita took the later a year ago and more Camp Hondas. He's saying he was fooled when they said they would teach draconic magic, and he says that doesn't sound good at all. However, Cantel says it could be true, but he tells her that Asmil's current dealer is very young to control authority, and then she asks if it wouldn't be dangerous if the guardian dragon wasn't by her side. He says that's right, Verita should have known that, and she says that as expected they have a different reason, and he says that as she said how expected, she must know something. Then she says that when Verita took the later she stopped in Vermont and said she would go introduce her to the later, but she remains obsessed with her contractor. He asked to meet her for no reason, just one time, but with her temperament she couldn't let this go. She says she had no choice, since the identity of her contractor was already had been revealed, and she says that as she has many people close to Zipfel in the upper class of Vermont if she acts. Without thinking, I couldn't get her contractor to stay there any longer, so Jean talks to her, talking about her having said that the identity was revealed, but the Asmil contractor was not revealed, and he says it is suspicious as they knew of this, and they approached later, and Murikan says that this is really strange and asks if a contractor detection magic was created while he was sleeping, but Cantel says that this is impossible. No one can find out about the contractor until the even manifests his authority, and she says that even if this magic existed, how would it be beneficial for them? But Jean says that they would benefit in two ways. First, they could minimize the dangers and eliminate the contractors outside their territories, and the second is if they kill the contractor, the Zell family can get the opportunity to manage to make a contract with God, and Jean says that it's actually not just an opportunity to make a contract. He is sure that they have the method, and he says that in his past life the contractor of the god of time Ulta officially appeared in the statue of stone in 10 years, and the contractor was a full-blooded Zipf, and he is sure they can make a contract with the god if they kill his contractor, and that is why the dragon guardian of Uria was kidnapped, and since he did not saw nothing about the ICT princess in her past life, she must have died, and that Cantel says that Jean seems to have many suspicions, but she can't believe it because he already has so many contractors, so why? And she asks if he doesn't is being exaggeratedly suspicious because he is the enemy, but Jean tells her that she is telling lies, like even she believes it, and he says he doesn't know what it's like for dragons, but human greed has no end. Even if he reach the top, they will not be satisfied and will want more things, and they are also people who have been at the reign for thousands of years. Whatever they did is not strange, and he is sure the bosses are planning something and not sure why she's pretending not to know, and he asks her if maybe she's scared. From the Zipfel and Murikan family soon enters the middle, telling her to wait, saying that everyone knows about Zibel's greed. And besides, he hates to admit it, but it's true that they are very strong, and he says that nothing bad comes from being careful, so he won't ask for your helps, but asks her to leave Vermont. Then she starts laughing, saying that Murikan has changed a lot to think that he would read the weather, and she says it's okay. She's going to make her a contractor first, and she's going to help him, and Murikan stays in disbelief at this, and she says that she needs to meet Violetta and find out the truth. She says that these two things he says are true. They must be looking for an opportunity right now, and if it calls, they will probably come flying right away, and she touches the boy, saying that besides that she owes Timar a debt, and since a of her descendants is there, he reminded her of the old times. Then she says that he even teases her purpose, and she says that even the boy's boldness reminds her to fear. So she says she will call Violetta, but then the contractor arrives calling Kay Cantel. She asks who are those, and she tells him who already told her not to leave, and she says that it's actually better this way. She's going to present it to them, and she says that that's Enya, the contractor of the god of time, comes back, and she introduces Murikan as an old friend of hers and says that that is the contractor he is with, protecting Jean Hun Candel. I see the boy, she just sorta getting all happy that it's Jean Rum Candel. Then he is in doubt, asking what is happening. She says she forgot to tell her after all. Has a little crush on Jean. Meanwhile, the girl continues asking for an autograph him, and after the girl freaked out seeing Jean K. Cantel asks how about she maintains her dignity with a contractor, and she starts apologizing, saying that Virgin, who she only saw in news, did. She loses her line. She says it's a little late, but she introduces herself as Enya and says she's a plebeian, but she's going to the gym as a scholarship holder, and Jean is impressed by this. After all, others really value the lineage of their contractors, and he says that this means that the girl is very talented, and he tells her not to worry because there is no need to be ashamed of having a lively meeting. So she asks if she can continue, but Cantel says no, saying he already told her no. Leave the house until she said she could. Then she says that staying at home was very sad, so she thought it would be better to visit than Cantel, but suddenly Jin was in front of her, and as expected she made the right choice by going to him. And then Jean notices here that Cantel is a little uncomfortable, and he says that a common student at the academy. There's something wrong there, because without seeing it he can imagine how much bullying they do to her, and that's why he didn't have a relationship with these people in his past life. Then he starts to get mad about it, and she asks what can he sing for because Jean is there. He says that the reason he is there is her, and he says that there is a chance that someone is after her as a contractor oughta. Then he asks if she's coming with him, saying he's going to protect the girl, and then she turns red like a tomato, almost freaking out. She heard people say that her prayers had finally been answered, so Cantel asked her to stop with, "That's it." But the girl keeps asking him to please take her with him, and she starts to exalt the god of time because he made this possible, because Cantel puts the girl to sleep and says he was worried about her, no, wanting to go, but it seems like she was worried, and seeing her like that, she says that if it's Jean, she'll follow the boy to the June Candel's dungeon, but he says his family doesn't have anything like that, but Cantel says he doesn't need it. Pretend that there is a dragon there, but while they are starting, Murican starts to snore, and Cantel says that he didn't even wait, so he talks directly to the boy, talking about why she said she would help him, and he says he has other reasons, such as keeping his loyalty to Fear and Enia's safety, but the main reason is that the guy fell asleep because he was tired, and she said he didn't know how weak he was. She had a little trouble, but he didn't. Manages to beat Violetta, and she says that if they need to fight Violetta, she will be the one who will fight, and asks if she's that strong, and she says yes, but the Murican is very weak, and her attack at sea would be a joke for Murican from 1,000 years ago. She says that now that she stopped to think, they need a place to stay until Violetta arrives, and she says that they can. Staying at his house, he asks if it's okay, and Cantel says that he just needs to convince that one because he's sure he's going to throw a tantrum because it's his ex's house, so Jean thinks to himself that it's different from the first impression he had. She is very attentive. He says he will convince the dragon, and she says it's time for him. He asks if there is anything else, and she says that in 10 seconds Anna will wake up. So she asks him to take some. Be careful with your words, and explain the current situation to her. But G notices that she hit the girl very hard and says that even a well-trained martial artist wouldn't wake up so quickly. But the girl returns to life, talking to the Master Jean, and Cantel says that in this world there are things that go beyond common sense, and the girl wakes up like a zombie, running after the boy, and the dragon simply steps away, leaving this cucumber in Jin's hand, and then with her calmer, she understands that there is someone after the contractor, and he is saying that she could be the next target, and he says that since he will trust her, and she says that it is an adventure scheme around a child and a girl besides of dragons and Jean, and she says that this is very romantic, so he says that it can be considered, and she says that thinking positive is the best thing. She will get ready to leave her family and Taiken, and she asks when they will leave, and the boy says that the better sooner, then she will be ready tomorrow. Ie says that the only family she has is a 7-year-old younger brother and a old dog called Pub, so can Cantel tell her to go back and get ready, and if she comes back before it gets late too much, and says he'll see them tomorrow, and Cantel thinks he can just tell the gym that Enia is sick. They say yes, because if she says she's going to leave the academy they'll investigate. They say that now they only need to worry about Violet, but they notice something. Presence, and the person asks if there is anyone at home, saying they came to get some firewood, and the Verita says that this is an very strange human being, as there are many trees outside, but Jean asks her to wait, asking if she really thinks they came to collect firewood, and she is in doubt, and Jean wonders if all dragons are so worried like that, and he says the person outside must be someone from the Vermont Division of Special Affairs, so she asks, why are they there? He says it's because of Miss Enia. They say they're going to keep watching this place from now on, and they want to confirm who the outsiders she brought are, but Cantel doesn't like the word watch at all, asking how they dare, so she opens the door and grabs the man's neck, lifting him high, and tells him to tell her truth, asking if he is from the Vermin Special Affairs Division, and he asks why she is doing this, saying that he is not of that view, but he keeps asking who sent it to him, and then someone else appears saying it was him, and asks her to please release him, and she says that if she kills him, another officer from the division will come right after. Then she realizes that that is the one commander, and says that if she needs to kill someone, the best choice will be him, so she punches him in the face. However, even with all that noise, he remains motionless, receiving her punch, and asks if she has finally finished. I'm is surprised that he was okay after taking this direct attack, and he says that he is not someone normal of the Special Affairs Division we see, and he talks about this red mask that only leaders within the division can wear, so he says that furthermore, he has a curved sword, and there is only one person who fits these characteristics, the right arm of the Emperor, the leader of Group 3 of the Vermont Special Affairs Division, named Hertz, and he says that his family treats him as someone good with swords, and Jim says that without a doubt he is at least in the 8 stars just by looking at it. his energy, and the boy says it was great that he covered his face since Cantel says he's human, he's very Forte and Raz in turn apologize if they offended you, but they had no choice but to confirm their identity. Of the guest who entered illegally, he says that they have already confirmed this and now they are coming back, and that's what Cantel asks if he is merely apologizing after invading his space in such a rude way. He says there is a limit to how arrogant he can be. However, Ras says that Senorita N just quickly left that house, and she asks if she doesn't think it's too dangerous for her to walk so late at night like this alone, and that Cantel feels that things are getting bigger, and RZ says that if he would be able to hold her there, but she wouldn't be able to help Enya if something happened to her in the halfway through, and he asks if she really wants to continue, otherwise he's already leaving, but what can he tell him not to forget, because the next time they go there he will have to put something important to him at risk, and he says that because of what he did, all the things he protected with his life, he will need to prepare to lose. And he sees that business is not good at all and says goodbye to her. Then he says that he confirmed the appearance of the foresters. He tells him to go back and find out his identities. In the meantime, all observations of the silver dragon will be suspended, but the subordinate asks if they shouldn't continue to keep an eye on the movements of K. Cantel and the outsiders, but Rash says that if he continues, teasing her will be even worse and he will take responsibility. So tell the man to go quickly, and he puts his hand under the mask and takes it off, bloody, and he says that they are definitely planning something. He tells man that everyone was in danger. He tells him to stop observation until there is some different movement. He understands all this, and already in Kasab that Cantel is saying a lot, that he is an idiot for leaving Arena in this city of shit. He says that if he and Murican hadn't been there, she could have easily thought about what could have happened. And Jean says it's a relief that they managed to avoid this for now, but he tells them to prioritize Enya's safety first, and she says yes, they will leave tomorrow. And the next morning Jean says that it is a relief to know that there was a merchant ship heading to Tychon. He tells her not to worry because he gave a lot of money to the captain, so he will take good care of Enya. Besides, M sings with her so she doesn't have to worry, but she says that's what she worries about, and she says who will contact Violetta immediately, and he will be able to find her as soon as Morak returns. Then a week later, Morak returns to that house, but when Jean greets him, he says that K. Cantel is grumpier than him. I expected it, but Jean asks why. He says that the two of them built this house when they were together in past, and he knows why she's doing it. They stand there, and Jim asks if his cold heart is warming up. But he tells him not to say shit like that because reliving old feelings is a difficult thing, but he says that these are the only memories. He says that 1,000 years ago, and a house that was just like this one were the good old times. With Timar and K. Cantel, he says that no matter what they did in the past, everything was fun, but within the dream. He can't see Temer's face, so he feels a headache, and Jean asks what was that, so he says that out of nowhere his head was hurting, and that Conte used him, saying that this is regrettable, and asks if he is tired just from flying a little bit. He tells her to keep quiet because no matter how weak he became, he wouldn't be so tired just with Esso, so she tells him get it together soon because Violetta's response has arrived, and she says it will be tomorrow night on a deserted island in south coast of Vermont, and they will meet there, and only Cantel gets in the way while the two meet. Hide, and he remembers the plan when he asked what she will do when she finds Verita tomorrow, so she asks what he means by what. Because she said she called him to find out the whereabouts of the guardian dragon of Asmal later, and if he pretends to be innocent she is going to beat him, so he says that this is wonderful, and Murican says that if it were his boy he was going to avoid a boring situation like this, and he says that since she's not with him she can do whatever she wants, but that Cantel tells him not to do anything because she's going to fight alone and doesn't need him, but Murican says that even if he has become weak he doesn't want his ex's sympathy, but Cantel asks who said it was sympathy and tells him to stop talking shit and that it has to do with Enya, and she says that this is also a dragon's honor thing, and that Cantel says that he will definitely go alone and ask who he thinks will lose to him, so she tells him not to worry and be cool. And at the moment that sincerely he thinks he won't see it, just because if he really hijacks a later and they are planning to create a contract in a suspicious way, it is almost certain that they will come prepared to dent, and then a gust of wind arrives along with the gigantic dragon, and someone starts laughing saying that this is an honor because to think that I would be able to find the silver dragon of time K. Cantel, and says it's a pleasure to meet him, introducing himself as Andre. Zipful and saying that he is Zia's contractor, but Kay Cantel shouts at Violetta saying that she thought she had told that he would come alone, and he says that Command received the letter from Kay Cantel. Andre was also present, and he says that just as he was interested in the story about the contractor, Andre was also very interested, so he says that he would like to ask for her understanding. So Cantel tells Violetta that he has been being good, Rod, and he says that if he made a bad impression, then they will get straight to the point as he has something to discuss besides the contract. Another, however, she gets straight to the point, asking where the later is. He sees that there won't be much conversation, and he realizes he was deceived because of course that's what she was thinking the whole time, and she tells him to respond, asking if he disappeared with Lurie a year ago, and she says that since then Asmil's contractor hasn't been able to find his dragon. He says he doesn't know which answer will satisfy her, but Violetta says that later is fine, and Cantel starts asking how he can make jokes. Then Violetta says she doesn't know which one relationship she has with the 1000 contractor, but he says it's not a good idea to get involved with Zell, so she asks if he's really crazy because he kidnapped a baby dragon who has no idea about this world, and the two are amazed at the dragon's courage, and Violetta says that it seems like this will never end and summons two tornadoes next to Cantel, and then he says that he is going to make her a proposal, telling her to give him the contract and he will let her live. Then she says that he is very clueless because he is nothing more than an old RT, and so he tells her to die at once and attacks that Cantel, but his attacks cannot reach her, and she says that he also has a proposal for him, telling him to return his later now, and this will cause him to die quickly in. Dolor and Andre, seeing this, starts to laugh shamelessly, saying that it looks like she managed to easily avoid the Violetta attacks. Then he activates his magic, saying that after many years he will be able to use his power to the maximum, and activates an expansion of mana, and Jin takes this opportunity to see the mana of a 9-star mage. He says is the first time he sees this after his rebirth. Then he remembers Andre Zippel saying he was rejected by the Run Candel and was a member of the prosperous Zippel. He says that now you'll just have to sit down and analyze to see what level he is at. Meanwhile, a mana dome appears at the location, and he tells him to chant prepare, and she soon thinks she needs to dodge it. But when she thinks she doesn't, a gust of wind comes from below, and she realizes she can't fly, and they start making fun of her, saying that the wind seems to be against her. Unfortunately, all the air on this island belongs to Violetta, and he starts to fly, saying that Mizir is the god of the wind and no one can fly without her permission, and he tells her that she will never reach the level of being her rival, invoking another blast of wind, and she calls him an idiot, asking if ISE is the best he can do, but Andre says that's not the case. That's enough, and he'll show you how it's really done by summoning a shower of thunder. Then he asks if she thought he could only control the wind, and so the dragon attacks her again with a lightning storm. Together with Andre, and the two go after her, and Jim starts to despair, calling the Murican, but he says that not yet, because it is true that Cantel is at a disadvantage, but they are still too confident. So Cantel summons a halo above his head and then gives a roar upwards, and this halo makes his whole body tremble, and Jim realizes that time has stopped. I even recognize that their magic stops in time, and Andre is amazed at the power of control, the time that stops until the magic, and he says that it's been a long time since he's seen something like this, but Cantel says that day she is going to tear his filthy mouth into pieces, and he stops laughing quickly, so he claims that he was left with after having seen just one spell, so he tells Verita to attack him immediately, but Verita is paralyzed, and the dragon realizes that he can't move her body, and he asks if that is the power to control time and so on. Cantel attacks him, dodging that attack they sent, then grabs the dragon and strikes Andre away, and when she attacks the dragon, she flies along with the Verita and throws the dragon to the ground, and soon after, she steps on him, making the dragon agonize. Then she bites him directly on his arm and rips his arm off. Dragon starts to agonize again, and Andre calls for Violetta, but Cantel asks how they are and asks if he's going continue talking while mercilessly digging her nails into the dragon's chest, and Andre starts screaming for her to stop, asking her to stop it, but she tells him to keep quiet, saying that he's next, and she realizes that managed to kill Violetta, but he used a lot of her power. He says he better ask Jim for help from Murican to kill the wizard. Then Andre says that she went too far, and that kind of arrogance is only allowed to the strong, and He takes out a kind of stone that looks like an egg from inside his hobby, and Murikin notices that it is an orb of origin, and from there comes a bunch of caterpillars with teeth, and Murikin is surprised by that, saying that they should all have been destroyed, and he asks how this guy has this, and a caterpillar with one eye and a very scary tooth appears behind him. Andre and that same caterpillar starts screaming, crying, and he says that Cantel probably thought that she would always be among the strong since she was born as a silver dragon of time, but she was wrong. Humans, dragons, even the gods in the end will all fall on Zipful's flag, so he tells her to stop resisting and die. And that worm goes on top of the dragon, biting the side of Cantel, so a little is said about the orb of origin. He says it is a security measure created by the gods to prevent complete destruction if the world was in danger. He says that this measure created by the powers of all the gods was eventually destroyed by themselves, not only because it became too strong but because it could become the reason for the destruction of the world. So the Murikin starts to wonder how this thing that should have been destroyed ended up in the hands of this wizard, so he shouts for Cantel and she starts to feel pain, asking what that is, and Andre starts saying that that's just how she should look at him, saying that this is exactly how the weak should look, but Murikin goes after him. Andre telling him to get away from Cantel, so he is surprised by the black dragon, saying that there are only 2 black dragons remaining in the world, and by the looks of it, he must be June Candel's Murikin. He asks if he has awakened his long sleep, so ISO means the boy next to him is his contractor and he must be the youngest one left recently from the house Hum Candel, Jinhun Candel. He says he came there on behalf of Olta's contractor, but it seems like he found an unexpected toy. He says that to even things out, he will also wake up a friend of his and so on. That snake starts talking on Violetta's side, invoking a type of magic that looks like black magic. Then the dragon comes back to life with a breath of energy. Cure, he says that they shouldn't have held back at all and apologizes to her old friend, and Violetta says that she really thought she died, and Murikin says that's crazy, but Violetta gives him a hard time, and then they start fighting, and Murikin calls the dragon a corpse and tells him to get out, but Violetta says that even though he has become weak, he still has a really dirty mouth, and he sends the Murak go back to sleep by launching a Rasengan at close range, but Murikin manages to dissolve into dark energy and appears behind the dragon, punching him in the back, but Violetta manages to hold back his punch, saying that she would feel bad if it was too easy, so he tells Murikin to be happy because he will appear in the story as the one who killed a legend from the past, but Murikin tells him to keep dreaming. In the meantime, Andre goes after Cantel, saying that they will continue there too, and says that she planned to give a better excuse, but now that she saw this she will have to die. But then he feels Jin's presence and notices that the boy was there since then, and Jin in turn begins to invoke the photonic magic, and Andre says that even his kid like him interfering, nothing will change, but he gives a flashbang burns clothes, leaving Andre blind, and he manages to cut the boy, and Violetta starts to get desperate and attacks the boy. And Murikin tells him to dodge, but he doesn't make it in time and is hit and thrown away, but he manages deflect the attack with his sword, but he is still hit against a rock, and just when he realizes that he is happening, that evil snake is almost biting him, along with an attack from Violetta, and the boy, without having the what to do, puts your hand on your chest and crushes your sister's stone against the ground, and so she is summoned there with a beam of energy, and she says that he never tried to talk to her even once, but it seems like it was too much for him. Take care of this yourself, while making a B10 entry onto the battlefield and going back in time a little before Jean attack. He was planning to do something, but he says it would be a waste of time if he got into a fight among dragons with his current strength, and he says that the only place he can help is against Andre, but he manages feel him behind him, and all this ends in him calling his sister, and soon Andre recognizes that that is the whale White, and she realizes that he is the second in command of the Zipful clan and his wind dragon. She says how good it should be something on that level, even for him to call him. He says that Jean did a good job with them as an opponent, and asks if he was hurt. He says that he was actually going to be hit by his attack right away, but she managed to come to help him, and he thanks her, and she gets a little emotional, asking Andre and if he intends to stay silent, and she says she thought he would tell her how this mess started with her brother, and then he notices that her opponent is the deputy patriarch of the Zipful clan, and a dragon revived by an artifact that possesses divine powers, and even though she's his sister, he wasn't sure if she could handle it. But now he's sure, he says. This fight is over and Murikan tells him that the boy better back off, saying it's a shame he couldn't do it. Block the attack since they took control of the wind, but he has a good sister and he says that if she had delayed just a little he would have been hit, and she saved the boy's life, and Andre says he didn't expect that variable because he never thought that the white whale would appear, but with this he is sure it was from June Candle that they broke his promise with Clan Zell, and he tells Luna that her brother used magic and says that the Zipfel clan won't let him. This will pass, but she says she understands, telling him not to worry, as he won't have the chance to report this to his clan, and he is upset with her arrogance, saying that she forgot his place and that Snake goes again at Luna, but she breaks her into pieces, and she says that all the Zipfels she saw were all bullshit, and it seems that the deputy patriarch is nothing different, and as she goes up again and the dragon puts its tail on forward to protect Andre, but he receives several blows to his body, so Luna asks if he will continue to maintain her original dragon form because it's much easier to hit her that way, and he starts to get pissed off undoing her transformation. Then Andre calls out to him, but he says he already understands, and then the two summon a spear of wind, and Andre helps him with the divine Embu artifact, that spear with dark power that they are using, and Luna realizes that power is not magic and is practically an ability of its own, but is also similar to energy. Demonic, and she says that the reason why the wind dragon is going all out like this is that he probably needs time to use this artifact properly, and she says she didn't think the second one in command of the Zipfel clan and a dragon of wind would be depending on a mere half-assed tool. Then she asks if they really thought that that little thing could save them, and when they launch that attack towards Luna she can easily dodge it, and the dragon starts to get more and more angry, asking how dare she say that because she doesn't know anything, so she manages to deflect that attack, and the dragon tries to attack her again, and she stops each of his attacks again, to the point of putting pressure on him, and the dragon finds himself caught in her attack, and soon he receives a kick in the stomach and falls bent over, stunned by that, and she says she thinks that's his limit, and she says she thinks he doesn't have any more nothing to show her, so she's going to get it over with by raising her sword to the sky, and she calls this the third decisive lethal movement of the Run Candle. Then a beam of energy goes directly through the face and image. Hers is simply cinema, and lowering her attack she calls it meteor showers, and Jean remembers Zed saying that the Grima of her clan can be described with a single word: violence, and she is destructive and decisive, and he tell them to fight, capture, and take advantage of June Candle's mentality is inside the sword, and he says that's why their blades don't have a defined shape. The only thing that exists are secret techniques and decisive lethal moves that exist to finish off enemies. Then Jean realizes that this is the third Run Candle meteor showers decisive lethal move, and it shatters half the island with it, and he realizes that it is blindingly beautiful and frightening, and when Zip receives the attack he is pulverized, and Jean notices that this attack is powerful but different from what we thought. Verita puts herself in front of Andre, telling him to wake up, and Andre wonders how this is possible because she is not even a contractor with the powers of a god, and she's also not using an artifact, and he wonders how she can do this with only human powers. But the dragon calls him again, saying that at least he needs to stay alive, and if he survives they still have a chance, and he states that the demon god's orbit can turn the situation around, and he says that even if he dies protecting him, he will be able to revive him with this. So Andre stays with Victo, saying that this isn't over yet, and he says that while if he has the demon god's orb in his hands, he won't die, and he says that as long as he has it he can become a god, and the attack continues to hit, and a while later Luna is a little crestfallen, saying that she is still far away and reach her father's level, but she says that this should be a good lesson and also a good motivation for Jean in the future. And if he couldn't reach his father's level, she hopes his little brother can, but then she notices something strange in front of him, a tall, slender demon with that stone in the middle of his body. Then he starts talking to she, and Luna says that this hurts his pride because it will be a pain if he is stubborn in front of his little brother. Then the demon starts roaring at her, and Jean asks what that is, and Murikan says that now he's sure the Zell they are using a contractor to make the Orb of Origin, and Jim is in doubt about this fear. And he says that it is a weapon that gods created to keep others in check, and fortunately it seems that it is still at a low level, but that is not changes the fact that it's dangerous, so he asks the boy to leave, but the boy wants to keep saying that they They have to fight together because he can't let his older sister take care of a dangerous situation like this alone. But Murakin says no to his sister. His son is more than strong enough to take care of this alone, and he tells the boy to go quickly because they need to get away, and he starts to get frustrated because he made a contract with Soddard and also met Murakin. After returning, he may have started his journey with luck and incredible skills, but he looks at himself. He doesn't believe he has to running away without even fighting properly, and he thinks that if it stays like this it will be like Ant, and he says that it will never happen again. That's why he never wants to feel powerless again, and he says he needs to get stronger, and the Murakin notes the boy, full of boldness, saying that he knew he wasn't a coward, but he doesn't believe that the boy has had a fighting spirit like that after seeing that, and he feels enormous pride, saying that he even wants to bite him. He says that this is more than what enough. He orders him not to let the fighting spirit that ignited in his talents pay off, and Morak says that as long as he keeps this with him, he will be the strongest, and Morak says that until then he will take care of him, his contractor. After 1,000 years, Luna is in disbelief because Zandii thinks he will be able to kill her just because she changed her mind a little. Appearance, she says he is throwing a tantrum because of his disappointments, but he says that's a shame, so he points at her, throwing lightning at close range, but she manages to withstand the attack with her sword, and Andre begins to say that the power of 10 gods are with him, and he asks Luna Run Candle what she has because she doesn't have it. Nothing but that giant sword of his, and tells her to admit defeat and submit to him, and even if her father, if it were there, it wouldn't do any good, but Luna says that for a swordsman, a simple sword is enough. While it becomes 200% more, and she says that he faced it with the magic he has been cultivating his whole life, and that it could be the shelf to make her use half her strength, and she says that just out of pity she will show him something that you'll never be able to do it with this item. Zinho makes me laugh, and she says she's gonna show me what a sharp blade is about to become stronger, and her sword starts to catch fire, and he notices that it is a crimson aura, and he says he has already fought against several Chinese swords, but he has never seen anything like it. He asks what that is, but that doesn't matter because now he is in the realm of the gods, and he tells her to fall upwards by summoning a giant Bijo lady and calling her arrogant because she didn't give up after seeing her strength. She will see how weak she is, but Luna keeps attacking, splitting him in half with a single attack, and she calls it the Blood Moon Mind Blade, and she splits him in half too, and after it cuts the orb of origin, it starts a very big explosion and starts sucking everything around like if it were a black hole, and she realizes that she is being pulled in. Then she hears Jean screaming, and Murakin comes down to her, and the boy asks her to hold her hand, and she realizes that today he also saved the youngest one, and the people of Vermont are incredulous that an entire island has taken over, and Ras also says that in addition a strange vortex has appeared and started pulling everything nearby, and they say they detected an abundance of mana nearby. There was mana from a human, but also clearly the mana of the silver dragon and the wind, and he states that the spies believe it to be Violet of the Zipful. After all, moments before the incident they saw him crossing the border, and it looks more like the dragon of wind is dead, so the leader is in disbelief about this as a dragon scale is in Raj's hand. He talks about the human hand. He asks if he found out who it was, then he says it was probably one of the contractors, and the leader is in doubt because he hires his guardians and strange energy that is left over, and he says that this could have to do with that thing they are developing. He asks about Andre, asking if he confirmed his situation, but he says he's still investigating, so the leader hits the table saying it looks like he's been letting a lot of things slide in his reports lately, and he asks if he hasn't figured out who they were. Kim Cantel's guests. He says he has nothing to say, and the leader gets more and more pissed off. He says, good thing there's nothing he can do if Raj couldn't figure out who could, and he tells him not to say nothing to the press, and if Enya isn't found by tonight, he says he will consider her lost, and he orders him to send more of his special forces to the Zell, only the ends, as they can have a friendly relationship with them, but they made a huge mess without warning, and he says that the rat should already know because he's not a guy patient, and he expects he probably knows that, and then Haas says he will meet expectations. calling him Your Imperial Majesty, and that's Armin Vermont, the Emperor of Vermont. Meanwhile, Buvard gets incredulous that they used the orbit of the demon god, and Vich, what do I say? Yes, because the silver dragon and the wind dragon crowded into the Sea of Vermont, and because of this an entire island disappeared, and he says that they say the only thing left was a vortex, but he has. I'm sure that was the orb breaking, so Buvard talks about how they could destroy his masterpiece, yes, and he did. Who ordered him not to use it recklessly until it was finished, and he says he can't forgive them and says they will complain with them right now because these stupid mages don't know the value of their work, and since I think that the zipful idiots ruined their plans, and thanks to that the day they will kill that reading pig has only been postponed. And then the Buvard says he knew and he had gone with Violet, and he also says that he even took the demon god's orb, but that man says that it can only be one of two things, or the silver dragon was more powerful than they thought, or someone outside intervened, and Dragon asks who it would be, and then he remembers that the man recently said that a dragon killed the cemetery giant in 1950. Remember Misha, and everything would make sense if it were her, and she wouldn't be afraid of the Orbit 2 demons, and the man asks if by M he means Murikin's sister, and the dragon says yes, and that Cantel is his ex, and it's impossible to say that they are not related, and the man says that he understands and says that he thinks his role has already been decided by calling each one's dragon. Then he asks if he wants to find him, and he says that this is impossible because if a black dragon decides to hide, no one can find him. But the man tells him to stop crying and says that finally it's a shame that they lost the orb, but the dragon. He asks if he's not sad that his brother died, and he says of course he is, but he knew it would happen one day, and he says he was surprised when he visited Soren's banquet without even telling him, but the dragon tells him to stop lying because they can ask the fragmenter for another orb anyway, and he says that without it they wouldn't be able to take down the June Candle even after Soren died, and the same Veil PR, the kings of the Black Sea. So the man says he is not Kadam, who I should find this tiring, and the dragon says that this is already crying, and he says that someone is trying to dominate the world. He should at least do this, especially if he wants to become the god of that world, and he gives a very small smile. Macabre, and already during the night someone knocks on Gil's room, and when she leaves she sees that they have returned, and the boy asks if she can prepare dinner for them as they didn't eat anything during their flight there, and soon she starts to get surprised because even Senorita Luna came, and soon she faints, and Murikin is in shock about this, calling strawberry pie. So when G wakes up she starts to get scared of Jean being kicked out of the house, but Luna says it seems like she got everything wrong, and Luna says that's her level of concern. She must be a good person, and Jean says she doesn't deserve to have someone like her, so Kashmir arrives there and sees that Jean is back, asking who those people are. Then Jean starts introducing people by saying that Kel is his older sister, Old Luna Hun Candel, and she recognizes him as Kashmiri Blade Ghost, and he says that's a shameful nickname that he has, but it's an honor to know that she already knows him, so he introduces someone else saying that Kel is the dragon guardian of Miss Enia K. Cantel, the silver dragon, and with the way K. Cantel looks at him the guy starts to tremble, bending down again, noticing that it is a dragon, and again then he reinstates his presentation saying that he is Kashmir, leader of the seven-colored peacock and Jin's ally. He says he won't make mistakes like the last time, so Jean gets straight to the point saying he didn't want to bother him but wanted to ask for something, but Cantel gets straight to the point, asking where Enia is. He says he was going to talk about it now in 3 hours. The later returned, and Jim is incredulous at this. He says that Enia is with his daughter now. He says there is something strange because later doesn't remember anything afterwards. of having disappeared, and when he talks to the dragon they kidnapped he says it's impossible and he says he only remembers when Verita told him that she would teach draconic magic. But he doesn't remember anything after that. And Kashmir. He says that he seemed to be doing very well for someone who was supposedly threatened by Clan Zippel. He says that maybe he couldn't have been kidnapped, but Cantel says no because the Z confessed this in front of him, and Murican guesses that they are getting along, getting rid of the evidence, and he says that they are erasing everything related to the demon god's orb, and the later memoirs is connected to this. He says that this is Zipfel's specialty. When something goes wrong, they just need to erase people's memories of this Kashmir. He asks what the demon god's orb is, and Jean says it's an artifact they were carrying, and then explains it further. Details. So after talking about what happened with the deputy patriarch and the wind dragon, he says that this is the artifact that absorbed the contractor. So Kashmir says that Jim has been through a lot, but play as much as possible, and he asks if she would like to be taken to Anna, and she quickly agrees. About to go, then Jay wakes up calling her master, so he asks if she is feeling better. She says yes, but when she looks to Luna, she comes back, faints again. Then after things calm down, Luna finds out that he eradicated Tezwan, notorious secret organization that decided to make the city Tycoon free as a base, and killed the deputy patriarch of the Zipfel clan. And Verita, he says that he managed to do all this even before having spent 2 months as a provisional flag bearer, but she says that because of her magic and inherent abilities, he will not only be officially recognized but will also have to be careful with his life when they find out about this. And she says he's becoming an incredible person, and Jill says she thought it would all be over when Luna found out, but she didn't think it would be like that. And then Luna says that she didn't want him to scare, and says that she can just pretend that she didn't see it. Then she says that all she has to do is hide it from the patriarch, but she says that, knowing her father is sure that he already knows, and when he hears this, G pinches the cat, and Luna says that everything since annihilation of Andre's death, it is likely that soon he will find out that Luna is in the middle of everything, and he will have doubts, asking if that wouldn't be a big deal, but Jim tells her not to worry as he already has a plan for that, and he says he was planning to go see his father with his sister, and they are calm, noticing that he has a plan. But when he gets to the real question, he asks, what the fuck is he trying to do, wanting to see the patriarch? And Luna says she knows the boy isn't normal, but he should sitting around doing nothing while her father pretends not to see what is happening. She asks him what he wants to try and talk to him, and Jean says he will warn him. He will say that the Zipfel clan is working on a scheme to overthrow June Candle, and he asks if it wouldn't be it's better to talk, since even death, God, the demons are involved. But Luna says she's sure he knows what happens when the flag bearer provisional comes back early without permission, and then she asks if he really wants to give up on his test, and Jean says that surely the patriarch already knows that he is in the middle of everything, and how he got to this point. He must go and tell him personally, and also use this to make a proposal. So Luna asks what proposal it would be. She thinks it's something that not even her older sister would do. She says that if Jean does this, her father will kill him, and Jean says that she trusts that when the time comes, her sister will give him protect. Then she starts walking closer to Jean and stops in front of him, looking at the boy eye to eye, and then she laughs, saying that now she understands how much G suffers because not even her sister knows what to do with the boy, and so on. She agrees to go with him, asking when they are going. Then he says he is thinking about using the first transfer portal the next morning, and then Luna says it's okay because it's better to be pedo before than after, and Jilly asks why she's helping him, and the girl says that her family is made up of people busy tearing each other down. He must have at least someone on his side, and that's it. She will be the shield this time. She says this because she knows that to do all this the boy must have some card in his hand. Manga then Jean laughs saying that she nailed it, and then in the Garden of Swords they say that instead of scolding him she brought him there, and the other sister Run Candle, who has no idea what her name is, asks Luna if she really thinks this makes sense, and then Luna tells Jim that it's really good that he's grateful for her. Then Vigo starts to get all pompous saying that the youngest doesn't care about anything and asks why he came back and that the boy like him dares to. The future flag bearer becomes the Garden of Swords, and Mill says that the result of the eldest is being too soft, and Anne says that he is diverting the responsibility of a reserve flag bearer and says that Luna should also thinks this is too much, and she thinks everyone seems to be well prepared for this, as expected her father must know. Then his psychopathic sister says that this is shocking and asks if the youngest gave up his right to become a flag bearer. But she says that no, and maybe after he reached puberty he became curious to know what happens after death. Behind his father, and he says yes, and everyone starts to get pissed off asking if he really wants to die because he must to be lucky to have survived, and he asks if Jinha thinks he's someone just because he's a little better than the Tana brothers, and Runa gets tired of it, telling him to go because her father is in the study room, and the boy walks past her calmly. She points her sword on Luna's neck, and she says that from now on the first flag bearer must leave his weapon, and that is a direct order from the patriarch, and he told the reserve flag bearer to go alone, and then Luna freaked out saying what it will happen if she doesn't want it, and soon everyone gathers around her, and Runa says again that this is the last chance of the first, saying that it is an order from the patriarch telling her to drop her weapon, saying that she will die if she resists, and Luna seems very willing to resist, but Jean tells her not to worry because as a member of the Runk family, she cannot. His son, he came to talk to his father and nothing bad will happen to him, so he tells Luna to go ahead and leave his gun, and Vigo can only call him sick, and after he leaves towards his father's room he says that he knew that his other brothers didn't know him very well, and although a reserve flag bearer returning home is against the rules, it's not like his father cares about the rules, and if he gives him a chance to explain as well as last time nothing will happen. But then he knocks on his father's door, and she even breaks down in front of Jean, saying that it seems like her expectations were too high for the boy he has. Sure that he gave him 5 years, and asks why the boy has already returned, and Jim is incredulous because the door opens left in front of him, but his father was on a balcony and he thinks he has already heard about it. He says that energy from his sword completely annihilates his enemies, and he also says that his father uses a sword made of aura. He must be showing him what will happen if he uses it, but he thinks it looks like he is weaker than. What did you think? Then his father says he won't ask twice, and the boy asks if a son has to have a reason to visit his father, and he thinks who can't apologize even if he dies. He needs to be confident but not arrogant, so he says he came because he missed his father, and if not he goes crazy hearing this, thinking about the boy missing him, and he questions if you've ever heard this from one of his children before. He says it's nothing, Malu, so he calls the boy mature man, asking if he became soft after being exposed to the world, but he says it's not because of that, and says who always liked his father. But soon a wave of murderous intent comes over G, and he wonders if he spoke something wrong, but his father thinks he almost laughed, so he says he didn't expect that from Jean, and tell him to stop inventing fashion and get straight to the point by asking what I brought there, and he talks about the vice leader from Zipfel, Andre Zipfel, who insulted him during the banquet, died, and Soren asks if it was Jean who killed him. But the boy says it wasn't Sister Luna, but he says he was the one who put her in that situation, and besides there's more. some things, and he asks if his father gives him permission to report everything, so he says that the boy is insolent and allows him to continue talking, telling him to sit down because he will listen to him. Then the patriarch says that, starting from Quinn until Verm, Jean has been through a lot recently, so he asks why he came here and asks if the boy thinks he caused some imbalance in the world after killing the second in command of a powerful clan, so he asks if that's it. That he came to tell you. Marin says that Andre isn't really the second strongest. He says that it's true that his sister was strong, but Zipfel's second in command was not the one who could destroy Arkandel, and Jean speaks. That's just a guess, so your father says he's right, as he says he was simply second in the rankings. Command, and it is difficult to call him the second strongest, and he says that there is another more powerful person in line behind that arc, even though it's something he can't tell him right now, so Jean thanks him for confirming his suspicions, but he still hasn't said the most important thing. His father asks what it was. He says they used a strange artifact, and his father asks what artifact. Ser Erigem says that Andre called it an orbit god. And says that, as he said, he merely assumed he had awakened, but the boy confessed very easily, so he calls Murican Garfield Run Candel the Great Powerful. Black Dragon was reduced to a domestic cat. Bro Soren is spending MCE. Jean notices that it looks like his father is having fun, and the patriarch returns to the sky above the replica of the Orb of Origin and says, he really brought some great news. He's gonna need to talk to Luna too, and he thinks he doesn't know how far the Zipfels went with this, but this power is certainly dangerous, and he wonders if the Black Sea Kings know this, and Soren says they are fragments of the Origin's orbit, and if they knew, they would do something about it. He needs to return to the Black Sea and his father. He says that just this once it's worth forgiving for breaking the rules, but the boy wouldn't be satisfied with just that, and he asks Jean what he wants, and he asks that during this time his father does not allow any Candel to travel around the city free of Tychon, and then his father notices that this is the place he secretly made his main base, so he says that's right, and in return he must do this, and he tells the boy to make Kashmir Ghost Blade to join him and prove to be his ally in Soren. He says that if he achieves this, no Candel will be able to set foot in Tychon without his permission, so he says that the boy has a year, so he must bring that insolent fool who refused to be a Run Candel instructor, who tells the boy to prove that he can persuade him, but soon after Kashmir is already facing Soren, so he says that everything is okay. That's what happened while Kashmir is white in front of the man, and in Kashmir's mind, he thinks that that is the strongest knight in the world, Soren Run Candel, and he wonders if that is the dignity of the most strength of humanity, and he feels like he's going to throw up just meeting him, but he says no because he's the guest of Master Jean, so he need not fear the El Soren, but when he asks if he is the Kashmiri Blade Ghost, he soon bows, saying that it is embarrassing that Lord Soren calls him a ghost blade, asking him for please don't do that, and then Jean talks to his father saying that to describe his relationship with Kashmir they have destiny is intertwined, so he says that he has already proven his relationship with him, and says that this is his father's turn to fulfill his PTE of the agreement, and Kashmir thinks that if Jean talks about interconnected destinies, then it will be up to him, and he thinks soon about Soren, thinking this talk about the fate of the interconnected is wrong, thinking it would mean that Chiken belongs to June Candel, and he soon thinks that the patriarch is going to take over the city, and thinks that Tychon's independence is going down the drain below, and then Soren calls his son a brat, asking if he is proud of deceiving his father, and Jean asks what he means is cheating because he was just lucky, so his father says that everything is fine and says that the boy started to. From now on, no Candel will be able to step on Chicken without the boy's permission, and soon Kashmir is impressed, saying that from now on their destinies are eternally linked, so his father tells the boy that if he has nothing more to say he should leave because he has something to talk to Kashmir, and soon Jim says that he will be waiting outside the mansion, leaving the guy there in the ass, and Soren says that he finally met Kashmir and says that they are going to talk a little, and from outside the brothers emerge. Comes running to ask Jean if he is okay. Then they ask why did Jean do this, and also ask if his father is going to leave the boy alive. So he realizes that the boys must have been hiding in a corner since the atmosphere was tense. He says he needs a small favor, and he says it's nothing. Too much, saying that the cadets of his faction, he wants them to take care of them while he is away, and says that he will warn them personally before leaving. And the boys think it's strange to be talking about their faction, asking if there's anything more important to ask. Also if he's okay with it, and Jim asks since when do they care about him anyway, he's just going to leave it in his hands. And the boys notice that he is the same as before, asking how he stays calm after talking to his father, and they notice that as expected Jin is a bit scary, and soon he comes back to Viag, who is scared to see the boy. He says to her older sister that she needs to talk to her father because he said he wanted to ask her some things about that day, and that's when he starts to tell me. Bark, asking if he hasn't noticed the current situation and asking if he's ignoring them, but he apologizes to her, saying that she can't tell him, and she starts to think that the boy is arrogant, asking how dare he. And then Kashmir arrives to talk to the boy, and Jim asks if the conversation was good, and he shows on his face that it wasn't. It was so much, and he says yes it was, and to take your mana to the level of 7 stars, and by using this the Zipful were able to create mass-produced wizards, and Jim thinks that the Zipful clan will start mass-producing mages 10 years in the future. This means they still haven't managed to find the mana source, so he won't let Zip get his hands on it this time. So everyone says the mages are coming back. That 2 locations are quarters for Zipful's wizards, while the relics they seek are in the 3rd warehouse, and say it won't be difficult to ambush them, but there's probably a barrier spell. But the guy who already he took 2 beatings and tells him not to worry because they will protect him no matter what, even if it costs them their lives. And Jean sees all this nonsense and thanks him for the comfort, and he says that for them to stay safe during his return they need to conserve energy, so they will take a break and attack in an hour, and they agree with that. And Jean tells them to get 1 each, and when they bite into that dried meat he says he's going alone, asking them to sleep well, and when they ask what he means all 3 of them start to fall. After all, that was poison, and Jean tells them not to worry because it's just a sleeping pill, and so is the boy. Reveals that they were very obvious to whoever came to kill him, and he says that it would be less suspicious if they were the ones. As usual, however, he says that it is natural for a dog to follow its owner's orders. So while the guards are at peace, they end up getting hit every day, and they don't even realize what's happening, and the boy is surprised that they only have 2 guards there. He says that it doesn't look like there are others outside, and he notices that there is only a normal lock, that there's not even a protection spell, and he says he thinks they'll open the 3rd warehouse for ordinary tourists, he says. Which may be why Zip doesn't treat this as important, so when he is inside the location he sees a circle, blood and barrier magic, and he says that it is known by people as a security spell to discern whether someone is pure blood or no, but in fact it is a magic circle that checks whether someone is a monster or a human, as well as whether the person is infected by a plague or not, and he says that in other words it doesn't matter whose blood you put in it as long as it's a normal human. So he cuts off that man's hand and says that he doesn't need to use his own blood and leave evidence. But when he puts the man's blood in that circle it starts to glow, and Jean says that the first barrier spell was simple and now he hopes to get the relic, but that circle starts to rotate in a strange way, and he says that he used the blood of the guard he knocked out, and in fact the magic circle is still there, and it means that the owner of the blood is sick or he is not human. So he wonders what this is and activates his silent wind, and he says he wanted to avoid using magic since could alert some magus nearby, but the situation changed, and he says that it seems like a fight is inevitable, and soon he begins to dodge the attacks of those monsters and tries to stab the animal's box, but it continues attacking the same injured person, and Jean has no choice but to pull out his sword with spiritual energy. So he notices that the mountains can recognize that the aura is dangerous, but when they hesitate, one of them takes out that knife that Jean had it stuck in his mouth, and he notices that they can even regenerate themselves. And he says it's a quick regeneration that normally only happens. Sees high-rank monsters, but these 2 cannot be monsters because they were humans until a minute ago. He says that there is Zippel territory, a place where countless mages come and go and natives are oppressed, and now there are even mysterious monsters. He realizes that those 2 are living golems, and creating living golems is completely legal, and the Zipfel have been using the Kolum ruins as a laboratory to experiment with forbidden magic. Jin reports that the strength and speed of a living golem is at the level of a martial artist at the beginning of the 4 stars, and their movements are inaccurate compared to a trained 4-star knight, and it shouldn't be difficult to take them out, and it is said that golems are magical weapons that can take a lot of damage and keep moving, but as soon as their cores are destroyed, it's over for them, and it talks about the head, the heart, and the energy center, and the core normally stays in one of these 3 places, and he says that it shouldn't be much different with a living golem created using forbidden magic. So in this case, he immediately hits the head but notices that the golem is still alive and beyond its speed. Not to diminish, in fact, he became even more violent, and he says that if it's not in his head, the next place would be the center of energy, but he notices it's not there, so there's only one place left, and he rips it upright. And guys, before the video starts, I wanted to say that this is part 2 of this video, so if you haven't seen it, still pause this one, go see the beginning of the story, and then come back here. Jin speaks. His mother's face, who liked the mission his sisters gave him. He says he knows it's a dangerous place, but he doesn't think so. This injusto, he says he thinks it's a sign of how skilled his sister thinks he is, and she gets indignant hearing. So he asks if that's why she gave him this mission, and his mother says he's banning her so much and asks if he's testing her. But he says it's nothing like that. He says that if the assignment of a mission suddenly changes, they would be showing their clan's followers that hierarchy and their power dynamic is fragile, and their mother says they don't have followers who doubt their clan for such reasons. Insignificant, and she says that his sisters simply want to hurt the boy, and she says that how can they not hurt him directly? They are abusing their authority. He says that this is the point he is trying to get to. If he were to fight against them now, he would lose, but he can change that by completing this mission. He says that this is a fight where he has a chance of winning, and she says that a mistake in the Cologne ruins could be fatal, and asks if he's really that confident, and he says yes, and he has something he would like to ask for, and he says if he can do it. To return this mission, he wants to keep the swords that his brothers are handing over, and the boy says that this is the least he wants to receive as a reward, considering that this is a mission that his own mother considered dangerous. She keeps thinking about his brothers. They start to ask why he would keep the swords they are giving him. If he really wants a sword so much, he can give one of the ones he has to. He then tells him to give up this mission. He says that he needs to stay alive until his father returns. But Jin says that this is strange, because if that was the problem, they should have stopped and me when they were dealing with this mission. So his mother asks them to stop, and she says that if he can complete the mission, she will give him her brother's swords, and she asks everyone to leave, and the boy's mother thinks that because she is worried that Jin could end up with a student, she stepped on the other children's pride, but she thinks she worried for nothing, and when Soren back will be happy to see how well Jin is growing. So outside the room and tell what he thinks. He's thinking about whether the boy thinks luck will be on his side again, so he says he doesn't know and says they might not know. However, he is very unlucky, and she says that this is the end of his relaxed attitude. After all, this is not a mission individual, so he will not be alone on his journey to hell, and he is grateful for their consideration, and he says he'll see them later. So at the moment of departure, RZ introduces himself to him, and someone else says it's a rhyme, has, and they say that it is an honor to go on the mission with him, and say that they would like to apologize for their previous behavior, and in that, everyone tries to be friendly with Jin, and he tells them to leave everything aside and work well together, so they agree with this, but Jin thinks that honor doesn't exist for them because the 3 of them are Mio and Anne's lackeys, so they are planning to attack you from behind in a dangerous place, and so one of them explains the mission, saying that they need to steal relics, and the location is the ruins of Kolum, and they have a total of 4 relics as their objective. And Jin talks a little about the ruins of Cologne, and it was a place where a few thousand natives used to live in tribes, and it is currently the territory commanded by the Zip clan. It is within the Pelin Kingdom, and Cologne was discovered a few hundred years ago by the Zibbel, and when they discovered the ruins they killed and enslaved most of the natives, and it is, of course, the Zippel clan now claims to respect the natives of Cologne, but that's just to keep up appearances. It may seem like if they were respected, but they are still slaves, and nothing is being done to improve their states. Since the lives and rights of the Cologne native are not of importance to most people, and the reason why the Zipfel kept the natives alive is to manage Cologne's natural environment and show repentance to atrocities of their past, and the Zipfel clan normally aims for reasonable government seeking natural obedience. Of those they rule, however, in the past they crossed there in call, and the reason why they became obsessed. Through the ruins to the point of sacrificing his own reputation, it is likely to be for the mirror artifact hidden by the natives, and he says that the existence of the mirror is still confidential information known only to the clan. Zipful, but the truth was exposed before he returned thanks to a brave journalist and the article written by him. There was a statement that Zipful's actions were to find a certain artifact and the name of the artifact obtained. From the testimony of the natives, it was the source of mana, so looking at it you can see. I walk my heart, and it says that. Can't believe they did something like that to one bro, then the other one goes back to attacking Jim from behind. However, the boy manages to quickly turn around and plunge his sword into the golem's chest, destroying it easily, and Jean realizes that he managed to finish this before his spell ended, and that was a very close call, and then he starts to hear a weak and muffled voice asking him to kill him, and when he looks at the golem that returned to a form similar to the human but very dry, and he sees it and feels very sorry and fulfills his last wish of that human being, and he says he doesn't know his situation, however there is probably no one out there who he wants to live as a golem of his own free will, and says that especially if it means that the moment he transforming you becomes a disposable tool with no future, and he thinks that now is not the time to get angry. One unexpected situation happened and even found the terrible secret of the level, and he also suspects that his sisters knew this when they gave him the mission. However, that doesn't mean his mission suddenly disappeared. He says that even if he tells this to everyone, the ZF will simply deny it, and he says that creating living golems is a crime so horrible that even the suspicion of it could lead to the clan being investigated by the Empire, but he says that he will first save this evidence, continue with the mission, and even if Zippel, with his power, may be able to secretly intervene in the investigation, he says that this is not something he can resolve now, and there has still been no movement among the bad guys. And it means that most of them only thought of this place as a common warehouse, and he says that they wouldn't be protecting this place so lightly if they knew the guards were Golem Gus, and this leads him to believe that neither everyone in the Cologne ruin is involved in using forbidden magic, and he says that the protection spell on the stones is relatively simple, but he says that the spell in that bowl there is much more complex. He says that it is normally I need to work hard to undo the protection spell, but with 2 dead golems it doesn't matter what he makes the Zipful there, they will have to cover everything, and in that he mixes that Rasengan with fire and creates 2 balls, merging them and turning it into something even more sinister, and he says that things are going to heat up a little while he takes everything from there. He activates the explosion in flames, and already at June Candel's house Luna doesn't like what happened at all, and she asks what her sisters were thinking about sending Jim to Zippel territory, and asks if they are sick because he is a boy 10 years younger than them. Luna asks why they did that, so they ask if your sister really wants to know, but Luna, what are they saying? That they carry their clan's flag they are fighting for hegemony with Jin, who has just entered the intermediate class, and she says she carries flags with others. Doors flags, the same goes for those who are not, and she asks if this is not an unspoken rule in this war. And they both remain silent. Then Luna says that they should be ashamed because she is ashamed that they are. She carries her clan's flag. But Neeson says that Luna was never interested in hegemony and asks what gives her the right her to do that, but Luna says that she wouldn't be saying that if they won after messing with Jean, but the boy has successfully completed his mission in the Cologne ruins, and his mother should be getting the report now, and Luna says that now they must make sure they understand why she is embarrassed, and in the end they only helped him and she got along. Ask if there has ever been a case in the history of Run Candel where a flag bearer was humiliated while trying to finish with her younger brother. She tells them both to leave, but before they actually leave, Luna remembers that because of what she see, Jean is not that merciful, and from now on they must be careful. She says it truly worried, and somehow things got out of line, but they are still her little sisters, so Luna's nanny. He tells her that he didn't think she would punish her sisters as soon as she got back, and she says she thought it was until the girl had another phase. rebel, however. She says that she would never have a rebel phase in the city, but the nanny says that she had a very extravagant adolescence and she is It's okay, and then my aunt comes back talking to the forastero because he also came in. A while ago he asks what he is doing, asking how dare he enter the June Candel's garden in this Huna-esque. For her to stop because the patriarch has already taken care of it and they don't need to continue with this scene, so me stays. And Jean thanks his sister again, apologizing for always bothering him, but she tells him to stop. This is because he just needs to thank her, and she also asks if he is going and he says yes because he plans to go back and focus on her training for a while. In this she tells him to be well then after saying goodbye to her brothers a month later. In Kashmir's underground training camp, June Kandel is in his 30th mock fight against Lisa Better and also is on Jean Run Candel's 30th defeat, and so he asks to go against her once again, but is told that soon it will be your 31st defeat. And guys, if you like this video and want more videos like this on the channel, leave a like. If sign up, let's go.